Hello, hello. Thank you for being here. Episode what? 4 we're on of the Normal America Show. I hope people like that name. I am your host, the very handsome and articulate Rob Knorr. So, yeah, got some good stuff to talk about today. Now, full disclosure, I'm finally back home. I'm back with hopefully my better equipment. Let me know if there's audio issues or anything like that. But my brother spent the night here and spent the day with me, so we were just kind of catching up. So I did not do all of the preparation I normally would for this show. So let's see how well I do off the cuff. I think I do my best work off the cuff, so it should be a good show. So the two major topics I wanted to talk about, as you can tell from the title here, is kind of the clip of Elizabeth Warren that kind of outs what socialism's about punishing people that do the right thing. And I also wanted to continue to talk about the Virginia rally and some of the fallout that's come about from that. I think I'll save the Virginia stuff for a second. Hopefully I'll have more people on during that, because I know people like hearing about that. But I have some beefs to pick with some people that have been commenting on my videos. Which, by the way, I encourage people to disagree with me. I hope you don't mind if I disagree with you in return. So thank you all for being here. John, Eldon, Disabled Vets Perspective, as always, thank you. Taz, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Everyone else. There's my other brother, Jojo, that's on here as well. So great to see you as well. So, yeah, let's get started and talk about Elizabeth Warren. Now, for those of you who didn't see my video, here's a rundown of what happened. So, Elizabeth Warren's doing an event, and a gentleman approaches her, and he's discussing the fact that Elizabeth Warren has claimed that day one in office she'll erase student loan debt. And so he says to her, hey, I have a daughter that went to university. I'm paraphrasing, but I have a daughter that went to university. I did it the right way. I saved. She didn't have to get student loans. Will I get my money back that I paid for her for university? And Elizabeth Warren doesn't say, unfortunately, no, or I'm sorry, that's not how it works. She says, of course not. Like, who would even think such silliness? And so the man, visibly perturbed, is like, oh, so I get punished for doing the right thing. That's socialism in a nutshell. That man said more than I could say in 2 hours of video that I'll probably be ranting today about the problems with socialism and the problems with this sort of mindset. We are, as individuals, you might make good decisions and stuff, but like, again, I keep going back to that scene in Men in Black, right? Where Tommy Lee Jones' character says, an individual's smart. People are dumb, stupid, fearful animals, and you know it. And it's true, as a crowd, that's why we can have propaganda. You as an individual might not fall for propaganda, but a certain percentage of people will. And that's why people like Edward Bernays had it down to a science. Well, the same is true with encouraging bad, not bad necessarily as corrupt, but unintelligent behavior. Hey, what's up, Dib? Anyone else? Johnny 5, thanks for being here. Done playing around? Yeah, I hear you done playing around. I will be out in town halls and in the streets, but I'm not running until 2022, so I'll wait until this election's over before I get to those things. But that's what I did in the past election I ran for. Breitbart's doxing high school students in the March Rally. Well, that's bad if that's happening. But anyways, when you encourage bad behavior, that's what you'll see as a result. Maybe not a particular individual, but that's what you'll see as a whole. And so that's what things like quantitative easing and deficit spending have been doing for years in this country, our national debt. We have sent the signal to people not to behave responsibly with your money. Get credit cards, go out and blow your money, get loans, get student loans, do all of this stuff. Deficit spending's good. This is literally what the leftists and the establishment is running their economy on. They brag about it. Borrowing's good. We want an economy based on borrowing. And it's a terrible thing. We have, by lowering interest rates, sometimes to 0% interest rates, what that does is, yes, it helps give you better rates when you're paying back, so it's good for borrowers, but it's bad for savers. The people that save their money aren't getting as much money back on their interest rates. Now, this all sounds very complicated, and it's worth doing a whole show just on quantitative easing and that type of stuff, but this is an easy example of it, what Elizabeth Warren's suggesting. So as I said in my video this, just tell you a little about myself. I owe huge amounts in student loans. I have a master's degree that I got from Tiffin University. Before that, I went to Clarion University and got my undergrad degree. It took me about 8-9 years to get my undergrad degree. Now, I wasn't going to school full time the whole time, but I'm going to be honest with you. I could have finished a lot sooner and owed a lot less money if I wasn't partying so much. That's just the honest truth. Now, why should you all pay for my poor decisions? I got a degree in speech communication that I'm basically not using now. My job that I work with in home healthcare doesn't use my degree at all. I owe all this debt because I decided to party a lot in college. So you, the average American, maybe you're a veteran. Maybe you've saved your whole life. Maybe you went to work right out of high school. Now all of a sudden you have to pay for my poor choices in life. Now, the only reason I bring this up, it shouldn't matter, but I'm just trying to stress to you that it would be financially incumbent on me as someone who doesn't make that much money, who owes huge amounts of student debt, to want to vote for someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, because that would personally help me. Sure, I'll take that erasing of all that debt, but I'm trying to vote based on what's best for the country and not what's best for me personally. So I'm not asking for sympathy to people to be like, oh, poor Rob, or oh, what a hero for voting against his interests. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm just trying to point out that I understood I'm taking responsibility for my life decisions. And yeah, am I paying all that money back as fast as I could be theoretically? Maybe not. But I make my payments every month, and I don't think that other people should have to make them. What they're doing is encouraging this sort of bad behavior from people to borrow, right? So it's a punishment to people that did the right thing and saved up. So let's think of this situation in a different way. Let's say you're 17 or 18 years old. I would like to see, and I think there could be a reasonable case to be made, that if you're 17 or 18 and you decide, I'm going to go to university, I'm going to take out exorbitant student loans so I can get the maximum possible refund. I'm going to use that refund however I want, whether it be legitimately through schooling or going out to the bar or paying rent, whatever. And I'm going to run up as big of a student loan bill as possible. And then when it comes time to pay it back, I will go to court and say, I was told by the leadership of the Democratic Party, which stood a very good chance to win an election, that it was immoral for me to have to pay this money back, that the government would erase all of my debt. And so when I took out that debt, I was operating on the assumption I would never have to pay it back. Now, of course, that would be an absurd court decision, and I don't think the court should rule for them. But why shouldn't there be partial blame be put on Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders? Elizabeth Warren knows that she can't, by fiat legally, just say all of this debt's erased on her own without going through Congress. But that's what she's promising. So even if that student wouldn't win that legal case, certainly there have to be people out there. Because remember, a lot of young people are completely and totally indoctrinated in academia, in the entertainment industry, from the mainstream media, from Silicon Valley, to believe this establishment leftist position. And so they think, what's the harm? I won't have to pay this back anyways. All of my student loan debt will be forgiven. Johnny Five talking about JFK. Yeah, I hear you. Right, unions, government jobs, all of this is designed to take away from the average person who's doing the right thing. So this man's anger should be all of our anger. Why would he be punished for doing the right? I mean, think about it. If we're going to cancel all student loan debt, why wouldn't we refund everyone who didn't get the debt but instead paid for it out of their own pocket? The implication, what Warren's saying to this gentleman, remember, she didn't say, unfortunately, no, you don't get your money back. She said, of course not. Of course not's what she said. What's the implication? Well, you don't deserve your money back. You had enough money to pay. Therefore, you're wealthy enough to sustain without getting the government money back. You can see this disdain for people that have worked, that have saved their own money, that have become successes financially themselves, all throughout the Bernie and Elizabeth party of the wing of the platform. Millionaires are bad. People that work hard are bad. People that saved are bad. You should have to pay. That's what they want. They want mass redistribution of wealth. And they're willing to say that they assume everyone who pays and does the right thing, they must be somehow unethically wealthy. And that's just not true. The majority of people probably that paid their own way through college or whose parents paid their way through college probably busted their butt working a long time, working 2 jobs in many cases. That's how they were able to afford this in the first place. Yet Elizabeth Warren says, tough luck, buddy. You're a sucker. So what that guy should have done, according to Elizabeth Warren, is not spent the money on his daughter to go to school and instead told his girl, take out taxpayer-funded student loans, never pay them back, and then the government will have your back. You'll never owe anything. That's what they want. When you encourage that type of behavior, what do you think the predictable element that's going to come out is? Individuals might realize, well, that's not the way to go. It's unethical or it's unwise. But as a group, you're going to see a lot of people do this. And this is true of many of these sorts of large government socialist type plans or decisions that they want. For example, they say on illegal immigration, we don't want open borders, but here's what we want. We won't detain anyone who comes across the border. We won't say it's a criminal offense to come across the border illegally. We won't deport anyone for coming illegally. We'll guarantee access to health care if you come here illegally. If you have a kid when you get here illegally, we'll say that kid's an American citizen. And we'll give you some form of free government rights like free education and things like that if you're here illegally. What signal does that send to someone who's a potential illegal? The signal is, well, I'm a sucker if I try to do it the legal way. Then I got to wait in line 10 years. Then I could be turned down if the United States feels that they've met their quota of how many immigrants they want for that year. But if I just come illegally, I'm guaranteed all this great stuff. What do you think happens? The problem is they don't want to look at reality. It's the same with this student loan debt forgiveness. They don't want to look at the reality. Things like, how will you implement this? What will the vote look like? Where will the money come from? They don't want to discuss any of that. They just say feelings are more important than facts. And you see this all through Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. Look at the last debate. I did a video on the last Democratic debate. Amy Klobuchar, to her credit, actually called out Bernie and Elizabeth, saying, if you don't know how you're going to pay for all this stuff, it's just a pipe dream. It's not reality. If you're unwilling to discuss, okay, how are you going to get even people in your own party to vote for this that have expressed being against it? If you're unwilling to discuss that, then it's just a pipe dream. You know, on illegal immigration, I've said this over and over. I don't personally begrudge any illegal immigrant. If you live in a terrible place and you want a better life from your family and you come here illegally, I wouldn't rat out my neighbor if I found out they were illegal. I don't wish them any animus. I understand they're just trying to do what's good for their life. But the law is the law. We can't have the signal sent to the world that any illegal immigrant can come here whenever they feel like. And when you engage in feelings over facts, just like in the student loan, we see in the illegal immigration what happens. So, for example, some studies from places, I think like Amnesty International or some UN group or something, but the most cited statistic shows that as high as 30 to 60% of women, illegal immigrants trying to cross the border, are sexually assaulted in some way trying to cross the border. This despite the fact that many of them will end up not getting in. Now, why would they take that risk? Because they have newspapers. Because they see that people like Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren and CNN and New York Times and Bernie Sanders and all the leaders of the Democrat Party say, how dare Trump keep them out? We won't criminalize them. Come on over. DACA, they should be rewarded. Now, look, I still think that we should probably have some plan for the DACA kids that they had no choice in coming here illegally. Their parents did. But we talk about how noble their parents were. Oh, they broke the law. They're greater than most Americans. Biden just said it in a town hall the other day. Most DACA people are better than regular Americans. If you're watching that and you're an illegal immigrant, why wouldn't you take the chance? And then tragically, you get sexually assaulted. And the trip's treacherous. People die. People get illnesses. People are taken advantage of by cartel members. And the Democrats and the establishment are sending these signals to these people. Oh, yeah, it would be immoral for us to refuse you. Trust us, just come. In fact, if you bring a kid with you, even if it's not your kid, then you're really in. Now we see another caravan's on its way. Yeah, I hear you, BB. There's all kinds of shady stuff with universities and the shady crap. What's John saying? Now let's go back to student loans and things like that. If we're going to forgive student loan debt because of the debt people are in, young people are in, okay, fair enough. Why stop there? What about mortgages? What's the difference? You know, Milton Friedman used to talk about this a lot. And he talked about there isn't a governmental policy designed to help poor people that doesn't end up doing the exact opposite. So, for example, take student loans, guaranteed government student loans, and government grants for people for education. Who does it end up hurting? Well, we all pay for it as a population, right? But who goes to university? Not the poorest people, not the people that had the worst grades. Those people go straight into the workforce. It's the middle class or the lower middle class and on up that go to university. They're the ones that are benefiting. So the poor people go straight into the workforce and then pay taxes so that the slightly less poor get to go to university. It's the same with Social Security. Poor people that go straight to work out of high school, they pay into Social Security immediately. They also, by the nature of being poor and the jobs they're working, tend to die earlier, which means they're less likely to collect Social Security. The people that are wealthier than them, they don't start paying Social Security until they're done with 4, 7, 8 years of university. They tend to live longer and collect more of that Social Security. Therefore, Social Security was a tax on the poor. It's the same with these student loan programs. Free student loans. Well, the poorest people, the people that don't have the ability to benefit from university education, they'll have to go straight to the workforce. They're the people that are going to be paying. But it'll just be the wealthy that pay, Rob. No, it won't. When you do that, when you think that you're going to tax the wealthy, all you do is encourage them to flee and put their money elsewhere. In addition to that, they'll eventually pass the cost on, like always, to poorer people. That's what always happens. You tax cigarettes more. It's not that the company selling cigarettes saying, darn, well, we just earn less money now. They just raise the price. The consumer pays more. It's the same with everything. Meanwhile, where's this money go? It's not just free money. It's not that this money's going nowhere. It goes to these universities. Now, you could look at a line of inflation as it's occurred, and it's basically a steady increase. In other words, $1's worth less today than it used to be worth in the 70s. So we can see a graph of how that's inflation's been caused, right? Everyone understands that. Look at a graph at the exact same thing, except instead of inflation of the average currency, look at the cost of attending university. And you'll notice that if this is the line for inflation, here's the line for the cost of tuition. Why has it gone up like that? What happened? Well, one of the main culprits is the government started guaranteeing student loans. Student loans are one of the only debt you can have that you can't declare bankruptcy for. And so if you're a business, if you're a university, and your job is to make money, which it is, that's what these universities do. They're not there out of the goodness of their heart. They're there to make money. And you now know that kids that basically aren't the most disciplined with their spending have been told years, ever since they were in elementary school, you got to go to college, you got to go to college, you got to go to college. And that's in our cultural mantra. So they're guaranteed this money that they have to pay back later in life, and they've been told they have to go to college. You're now in a position selling that product, selling the product of, here, university. You could double the price. Now, if the government wasn't giving that money, you couldn't double the price because then only half the students would be able to go. Then you would lose out. You would sell less degrees. You would sell less access to the university, and therefore you'd make less money. So you would have to be competitive. You would have to lower your prices. But when there's basically an unlimited pool of free money, you jack the prices up. Now, if government intervention is largely responsible for the mass increase in tuition now, why would we want a massive amount of more government intervention? It's just like with Obamacare. With Obamacare, we were told the insurance companies are corrupt and they're terrible. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to force every American to have to buy the insurance company's product. That'll teach them. You think it's the same with these universities. You know what? Free college for everyone. That'll show those corrupt universities. The university's like, great. We're going to raise tuition times 10 times. How's that sound? The government's paying for it. No problem. Have you heard Bernie or Elizabeth talk about price controls? Have you heard about them saying if the government's going to pay for universities, then the government will force universities to charge less? No, of course not. They haven't said anything like that. And it's a win-win-win. They get to redistribute wealth and get massive power, which is what the Bernies and Elizabeth Warrens want. They get to punish savers and the people that did things right. They get to get their wealthy friends in the academia system that's almost all exclusively establishment left-wing, incredibly rich. And then the universities get to indoctrinate a whole new generation of people to follow those establishment leftist policies. All the while you, the regular American, the normal American who's just doing the right thing and saving, you're paying to indoctrinate your children to do the wrong thing, to borrow money and never pay it back, and to learn about how crappy this country is and how we all need to be progressive and establishment. That's what's going on here. Erase this. Am I the American picker guy? No. Maybe I look like him a little. I never thought about it. But that's what goes on. Are these degrees helping people, many of them? Do you think that if we then send everyone to university, if we give free university to everyone, right? Undergrad school. What do you think that does? So right now, if you don't graduate from high school, you're way behind the 8 ball in trying to get employment in most places. You need a high school degree or a GED. So if we make it basically, and now we're just going to tack 4 more years of government-funded schooling, that'll just be the new norm. Now it'll just be, everyone goes to college for free, so if you didn't go to college, it's like if you didn't graduate high school. So now you'll have to go and pay for more schooling on top of the 4-year degree that you get to separate yourself from the pack. Meanwhile, these degrees, go to a university. I spent a lot of time there. They're garbage. So much of what we teach, all of these electives and stuff, all of these courses on, identity politics, and it's garbage. These aren't helping our society. The point of university was to train people, to teach people on skills that could benefit themselves in society. That's not what universities are doing. Some aren't, and parts of some are. But if we have a massive influx of more students going to university now, or is all of a sudden, are they all going to be engineers? They all going to be doctors? Or are all these courses in the humanities that are totally worthless just going to start springing massive increases? Let me read the chat here. Yeah, free brainwashing for everyone. Exactly. No, maybe you're young, right? And you think, that's what I want. Free university. That'll save me money in the short term. That's good. I won't have to pay back the student loans. Nothing is free. Nothing. Everybody knows that. But think about what this means. So I was telling my brother today this story. I had this friend. He was in a bad car wreck of his own fault. I think he was probably drinking, but it was his fault regardless. He was in this bad wreck and he had to have pins in his spine and all this crap. Terrible stuff. And so he went and they did all this stuff. They got him back on his feet. but he owed all this money to the hospital. Now, they weren't collecting. They weren't suing him for his property. He didn't go to debtor's prison. None of that was happening. But nonetheless, his credit was affected, and he was upset. Now, granted, this wreck was his fault. It was poor choices he made that led to the wreck. But then when Obamacare starts coming out, he's like, yes, finally, free insurance for me, finally. And he was adamant about it. And I was like, you're making a huge mistake. It's not going to be free. They couch this in terms of morality, but if you listen to them, they'll tell you the truth behind the scenes. So here's what they said about Obamacare. They said, see, the problem with Obamacare is it's immoral. Healthcare is a right. Everyone deserves healthcare. It'd be immoral not to give people healthcare. And by the way, insurance premiums and stuff are going through the roof and people can't afford to pay for it. Well, why are the premiums going through the roof? Well, so many people are using these services and not paying for them. So the insurance companies have to raise the premiums. Do you realize what they just said? Those two arguments contradict each other. On one hand, they're saying people don't have health care and that's immoral. On the other hand, they're saying people are getting health care without paying for it and that's costing me more money. That's the point. It's costing them more money. So you basically had the following groups of people going into Obamacare. You had people that were paying for health care and using it. Then you had people that were not paying for health care but still using it. So that meant that people that were paying and using the service had to pay not just for them, but also the people not paying. And so this group of people that are paying for healthcare and using healthcare said, well, this sucks. We don't want to pay for the people not using it. Or I'm sorry, we don't want to pay for the people not paying. So we need some other people to come in and pay those people's fair share. Now, they couldn't say, we don't want those people not to have healthcare service because that's immoral. So what did they need? They needed people not using the service to pay for the service. That's what they needed. That's when they talk about why the mandate was important. Because they knew if they left it up to you, healthy people would probably be like, I don't want insurance. Then it wouldn't lower costs. Now, what group of people, what would I say to my friend? We're both young in our 20s at the time. What group of people do you think doesn't use healthcare that much on average? Do you know who it is? Young people. That's who was going to pay for Obamacare. People that don't go to the hospital regularly. People that don't use insurance regularly. That's predominantly young people. You'll now have to pay. It's not going to be free. And long story short, 2-3 years after Obamacare, I run into that same friend and he's like, oh man, this sucks. I don't even have healthcare and now I got to pay this stupid tax. Yep. That's what you voted for. So if you're young and you're like, yeah, I'm a Bernie bro. Yeah, I'm for Elizabeth Warren. Free tuition. Woo! Here's what you're signing up for. Your 4-year degree now means nothing that you were going to attend university with. You're now obligated to go even if you didn't go because not getting a 4-year degree will be like not getting a high school diploma. So that's 4 more years that you won't get in the workforce to earn your own money. And then on top of all of that, when we spend massive amounts of this debt, eventually it'll have to be paid back at some point, and it's not going to be by Bernie Sanders. He'll be long in the grave, unless we get nanotech or something to keep his heart rolling. Who's going to pay back these debts? Ain't going to be the older generation. Ain't going to be Biden. Ain't going to be Trump. Ain't going to be Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. It's going to be you, the young person. That's who's going to pay it back, or your children. We just keep kicking the can down the road. Kicking the can. Now, I know if there's a Bernie supporter in here, they'll say, yeah, but we spend money on all this other crap, foreign wars. Okay. That doesn't mean we should spend more on this. And don't buy Bernie's garbage. I'll spend less on the foreign wars, and then we'll give that money to the children for education. That's funny. I just remember Bernie a couple months ago saying the biggest foreign policy disaster Trump's made was trying to pull troops out of Syria. So when Bernie actually has the chance to endorse spending less money on foreign regime change wars, all of a sudden he's for it. How about we reduce the deficit spending? And by the way, I criticize Trump for this as well. Why don't we reduce the deficit spending before we institute massive new programs like this? Because you know exactly what will happen. We'll institute this program and they'll just say, well, we won't cut anywhere else. We'll just increase taxes. Or we'll just print more money, more quantitative easing. Let's check here. Done playing around says nothing's going to stop it. I'm as much of a pessimist as the next person, but there is something that can stop it, and that is the best thing we could do is information. Stop their monopoly on the flow of information through listening to people like me or left-wing people or starting your own show or just talking to your friends and family about what's going on. I know it seems biblical. I know it seems depressing, but look, things could be worse. And the more information we get out there of why this stuff's a bad idea, the better chance we have of defeating it. Now, the other thing, what do I always say? Once you give the government massive power, it's nearly impossible to take that power back. What's the saying? You could vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out of it. And that's basically true. Once you promise people something, then they make life decisions based on that promise. So it's really difficult to say, oh, sorry, it turns out that promise was a bad idea. Now we're going to take it away from you. I was talking to my brother today about pensions, right? Picture you live in Chicago and you were a garbage man and you're getting paid like $110,000 a year. It's probably not a fun job. It's probably a difficult job. You know, going out in crappy weather early in the morning, dealing with garbage, probably not the funnest thing in the world, but you're paid handsomely through the city and you're promised a massive pension. So you work till you're 63, we'll say, 30, 40 years as a garbage man in Chicago. And you were promised, hey, your pension's going to be like $100,000 a year once you retire. Now it turns out you retire, all these baby boomers retire. Now the city government has to pay them the $100,000 a year. But guess what? They still need garbage men. So now you hire new garbage men. Well, you got to pay them. But all your money that you've budgeted to pay garbage men, you're now paying retired garbage men. Now your city's going bankrupt because you can't afford to pay for all these services that you promised. What do? Do you say, well, we'll just pay the current garbage men minimum wage? They ain't going to do it for that. Particularly in a world where these same Democrat policies are saying, we'll pay people to sit in their butts at home. Why go out and collect garbage for minimum wage where you can get more on disability or on unemployment or working at McDonald's? You just leave the garbage pile up? Well, that's not good for the Democrats. They're supposedly environmentalists. So what do? Do you tell the people that you promised these pensions, sorry, we can't give them to you? That seems incredibly unethical as well. It's a no-win situation. Why? Because the government decided to intervene and offer all of this excess program. Once it was offered, now it's unethical to take it away. Insert any massive government program like that. You could make a solid case. Barack Obama told the world, DACA, those people should all be allowed to stay. They should be given full citizenship. We have all the Democrats telling all these people out the world, we're not going to enforce these immigration laws. We're not going to send you back for being illegal. There is a reasonable argument to be made that if an illegal comes here based on believing that, because that's everything that the media has been saying, that's everything the Democrats have been saying, and the establishment have been saying, that when they get here to then say, sorry, you got to go back, does seem unfair to them. Now, it's terrible, it's tragic, but we have to look out for our own country first. But it's absolutely disgusting that these promises were made to them in the first place. Social Security, it's considered a huge success. I'm 35. I'll have to work until I'm 90 to see any Social Security money. I've paid in my whole life. The money's gone. They're corrupt. They stole it. That's what the government did. What are you going to do? Tell senior citizens, sorry, we spent all the Social Security money. We know you paid in your whole life, but it's just not there now. That doesn't seem right. So what? You spent the money, but you just print more money and give to them? Then that costs future generations that are paying in. Well, it would be unethical for them to tell my generation you can't collect Social Security. So the deficit balloons further, and we tell our kids they got to pay for it. Then our kids, when they get to that age, it's ballooned even further, and they tell their kids they have to pay for it until the bubble bursts. Once you vote in that massive government program, it's near impossible to end it. Once you tell people free healthcare, free university, it will be near impossible to remove those programs, even if they're a disaster. Now remember, I've showed you the footage, 1989, an interview. Bernie Sanders admits universal healthcare would bankrupt this country. Now, to Bernie's credit, I understand his argument would be, but my plan's different than when I was talking then. And fair enough, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt to that. But Bernie should be able to see that clearly a reasonable person would have questions about the affordability of something like this. And if there's a chance that it could bankrupt us, and we know it'll be near impossible to stop once we vote for it, then we should exercise extreme caution before we give the government that much power. The same with the Green New Deal. It actually said in the first draft of the Green New Deal, pay people, guarantee government checks for people that can't or are unwilling to work. Now, what are we talking about? What did we start talking about here with the idea of this gentleman saying, I did everything right, I saved, so my daughter didn't have to get student loans, and now I get punished? I don't get my money back? What do you think happens if the government says to everyone, hey, by the way, if you don't feel like working, don't worry, you don't have to. We'll pay for you. Guaranteed income, livable wage. Millions of people that otherwise are able-bodied and would work will say, I don't want to work. Who's going to be janitors? Who wants to do really tough, terrible jobs if you can make just as much money sitting at home? Well, then, again, we can't go without janitorial services. You can't go without garbage men. You can't go without all these tough jobs. So what do? Well, you're going to have to pay those jobs way more. That's the only way you'll encourage people to work. Where do we get the money for that? There is no such thing as free money. It's going to come out of somewhere. And historically, almost every time the government tries to intervene, it ends up screwing the poorest people over the most. The very people it's claiming to help. We have to discuss what... Oh, no, my buddy Augustus is in here. Yeah, sorry, man. Also, I probably won't be screaming as much as normal, Augustus, because I'm losing my voice a little, so... Yeah, right, done playing around. Vote for Yang, get your free 1,000, right? I didn't see it, but I saw someone talking about the first documentary Obama put on Netflix, and it had to do with, I think, one of the GM plants. I could be mistaken about the type of plant, but it was basically a factory in the United States that was closing. And the narrative that Obama's putting forth in this documentary is this, that due to like capitalist policies, this company shut down, but then these Asian investors come in and they keep the company open. And then the workers are so happy with these Asian investors. Yes, our jobs are saved. Thank goodness. Okay? So then the documentary goes on, and little by little, they start to like do union things. They're like, we want more money. We want more breaks. We want more of this. We want more of that. And the documentary's taking the side of the workers. It's like, yes, these are all things they should legitimately have. And eventually, the Asian investors are like, we're done. We're shutting down the factory. And then when they interviewed them, they said, look, we can't make money like this. We find these demands to be unreasonable. We no longer can make a profit. This isn't how things happen in our countries. Now, are those investors unethical or whatever? I don't know. But that's pragmatism. That's reality. Services will just shut down. If you mandate that all auto employees that work at a car manufacturer now have to make $50 an hour, do you think that that's it? They'll just make more money? The car companies will just make less money and life goes on? No, they'll just say, fine, if we have to do that. One, we'll go overseas more than we already do. And second, if we can't, we'll just increase the price of the vehicle to offset. Do you think the rich person cares? Do you think Bernie Sanders, who's worth millions, cares? No. He'll just buy the car he wants, pay a little more, no big deal. It's the poor people that suffer. It's the same crap when you hear them say, well, we're going to end fossil fuels. How do you end fossil fuels? Well, there's two ways. One is you just ban them. Or second is you subsidize alternative fuels or you punish fossil fuels to make the price of fossil fuels artificially higher than those of other fuel sources. In both cases, if you ban fossil fuels or if you artificially make their prices less competitive, who suffers the most? If your gas goes from $2 a gallon to $5 a gallon overnight, do you think that Leo DiCaprio is struggling? You think Mark Zuckerberg cares? The single mom that's driving to go to the diner with her beat up jalopy that can barely afford to get her car inspected and is just making apartment payments month to month, that's who gets screwed. That's the person who can't afford 3 times the cost in fuel. But they don't care. They just say, well, don't worry, the government will take care of them. But now we're back to the original problem. Who's going to pay for the government? Now, we have to be honest. We don't have a purely capitalist system. Let's look. I was talking to my brother about this earlier. Let's look at the current system. One of the things that happens is people want to discuss politics or to discuss, let's say in this case, economic theory. And so they'll say things are terrible right now. Look at income inequality. Look at homeless people. Look at disease. Look at poverty. Things are horrible. And it's because we have this capitalist system. Well, there's 2 mistakes there. One, we have to look at, okay, it's totally fair to look at how terrible things are, but we also have to look at how good are things. People don't want to hear this. It's easy to be doom and gloom. But this is the best point in human history to be alive. Period. Thanks to technological advances, human rights advances, etc. This is the best time to be alive. Crippling poverty, people that can't afford a meal a day, has been cut in half in the last 50 years. In half. Infant mortality rates in sub-Saharan Africa right now, in the poorest area in the world, infant mortality rates are the same today as they were in the United Kingdom in the 70s. That's an incredible achievement. Most of these achievements had to do with this radical new idea called personal liberty, free markets, ownership of your own labor and property. This is, as far as human history goes and governmentally goes, kind of a new concept, or at least it's being implemented in a major way as a new concept. What do I say all the time? What's the globalist agenda? They want to return us to feudalism, which is the idea that you're a serf, you live as a peasant outside the castle, you work, and then all the rich people, the Zuckerbergs and the Bernies and the Bezoses, they live in the castle at the top of the hill, everyone in Hollywood, and they throw you bread, they throw you whatever, but you don't own any of your labor. Everything goes to them. Everything goes to the government and their wealthy interests. Then they'll distribute it as they see fit. You think in a purely socialist society, Bernie's not going to keep his millions? Of course he will. Of course he'll still be flying first class or on a private jet. Of course he'll still have that second lake house. And he thinks he's morally superior because, hey, out of the goodness of his heart, he's taken money from these people and given you some bread. Bread lines are a good thing, he says. That's how insulting this is. People that believe this feel morally superior. What's up, Raincat? Thanks for being here. Jeff Barnes, good friend of mine. How you doing? Yeah, dad joke and puns, which, yeah, you know, Jeff. It's some of my favorite. So we have to first be honest. How bad are things? Now, just because things are the best they've ever been in human history doesn't mean there's not a lot of really serious problems that we should be looking at. Absolutely, we should. Income inequality is something we should look at. It absolutely is. Homelessness is something we should look at. All of these things, illness, drug addiction, suicide, of course, these are all real problems. So just because things are, if we look at things in context, they're better than they used to be, doesn't mean they can't get much better, and that as humans, we shouldn't strive to make them much better. But we have to be honest. Because when you just pretend like things are so horrible, it's beyond redemption, then we get to the next part of the equation, right? Which is, what's the blame? So we've already shown the problem of not being honest about how bad is the problem. But then the next part is, what's to blame? And they say, well, we have a capitalist society. Do we? Is that what our society is? Capitalist? Our society is a mixed economy. You have property rights. You have pseudo-free markets. But you also have government intervention in a big way. And socialist policies. What do you think Social Security is? And all sorts of other things. That's redistribution of wealth. Welfare programs, unemployment programs, food stamp programs, affirmative action programs, government subsidy programs. These are all redistribution of wealth. These are all socialist policies. The problem is both sides are, in my opinion, either disingenuous or ignorant of the fact that we don't have a purely capitalist society or a purely socialist society. And it's very rare to see a society that is purely one or the other. So now, the story that we hear from the Bernies and the Elizabeth of the War, things are so horrible, it's beyond redemption, and it's because of capitalism. Well, that starts to fall apart. Things aren't as bad as it seems, and we don't just have a capitalist society. Once we recognize those things, we can have a fairer debate. We can have a debate that's not only fair, but more likely to get actual solutions. I think that reasonable people could disagree on where they want that sliding scale of capitalism to socialism to be. I think that we probably don't want a government with 100% no social safety nets. But I'm close to it. I believe that almost all the time government intervention leads to worse situations. But I do understand, I don't want total anarchism, no government. That's not what I want. I understand we need roads, we need self-defense. There probably should be some sort of social safety net, though very limited and regulated. Our tax rates are 20, 50, 100 times higher than they should be. Of course, because we've spent beyond our means as a government for so long, the only way to solve this is to continue to have those high tax rates and cut back on how much we spend. In other words, take government out of it. Just say you as a person. Let's say you made $10,000 last year, but you spent $20,000. Well, the only way to get even is the next couple of years, if you continue to make $10,000, now you can only spend $5,000. So you have to spend less than what you make. That's the only way. This voodoo economics that, no, we can just keep borrowing to infinity. It doesn't work. And it encourages poor behavior, both at the individual level and at the governmental level. They can't pass a balanced budget, neither party. It's unfathomable to them. They have no idea. They've made so many promises. It's impossible for them. So I default to more free market principles, and I think that full out socialism of the extremes that Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are offering are terrible. Terrible, would cripple our country. Cripple any country that goes for those type of policies. But it's fine, we can have a reasonable debate on it. We should be honest, though, about how bad is the problem. What is the cause of the problem? I think that most of the problem we can see, just like the rising tuition costs. To me, government intervention is a big culprit. If the government wouldn't have intervened, then tuition would have been forced to be lower because no one would have been able to afford to go to universities except a select group of people. I hear tell of when my parents could have been in college, or my grandparents, you could have went for like $3,000 a semester. People used to go to college and get a job and pay for their university almost exclusively with their job that they had. That's unthinkable now. You're basically put into indentured servitude. And as all things, government intervention causes the problem. So the people that cheered for the government intervention, they said, oh, it's the right thing to do morally to give these kids free government money, to give these kids guaranteed loans to go to university. Morally, that's the right thing to do. Everyone should have the ability to go. Then when that makes the problem so much worse, and now people are in perpetual debt, what do those people say? Do they say, wow, we made a mistake. Government intervention was the wrong way to go? They say, no, we need more government intervention. What do I always tell you about Schrodinger's Patriot Act? They said, we need to take away your Fourth Amendment rights. We need to listen to all your phone calls. We need to basically molest you like we're Joe Biden grabbing a little girl when you go through the airport. Right? That's what they told you. Oh, it's all for your safety. So that's what the Patriot Act was. So we passed the Patriot Act. Now let's say 10 years after the Patriot Act. No terrorists, no terrorism, no terrorist attacks. They would say, see, the Patriot Act worked. The government intervention into your rights worked. Now, let's say they pass the Patriot Act and terrorism goes up tenfold in the next 10 years. Do you think they're going to say, oh, the government intervention didn't work? No, instead they say, see, that's proof we need more government intervention. It's the same with government intervention into academia. The more they get involved, the worse it gets. Okay, just checking the chat out a little. Thanks for sticking with me home. But that's what we're talking about. Now, if you stick with me at 4 p.m., I'm going to have one of my subscribers wanted to do a debate with me. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but his argument is that it should be illegal to advocate for socialism. Clearly, I disagree. If I'm a purist on anything, it's free speech rights. And I have a lot to say as to why we should, even if I don't like socialism or advocacies of going so radically socialist, we should not criminalize people suggesting it. It has to do with intent and things like that. Yeah, I mean, you have famous stories too. Like, you look at the Federal Reserve. Look, it's quite clear. I'm not going to get super into the Federal Reserve today, right? But the Federal Reserve isn't a government institution. It's private banks that lend our government money. We don't even know who owns the Federal Reserve. We don't know. We don't know what their books are. Ron Paul for years has been trying to have amendments and bills passed to audit the Fed, and they won't do it. The Constitution's quite clear that only the federal government has the power to print and coin money. And it makes sense, because if you go back before our Constitution, we had what was called the Articles of Confederation. One of the big problems, because the idea was the Founding Fathers wanted a federalist system. And by that, they meant states' rights. Because the Founding Fathers understood the problems with a tyrannical, oppressive government. So they wanted as limited as a government as possible. But they understood you need some form of government. Their idea was that the most important government in your life would be at the local level. The government closest to you, which makes sense. Then it would be the state level. Then lastly, the federal level. But one of the problems we saw was you had each state printing their own money, and then they would undervalue or overvalue certain currencies to try to screw people from other states out of wealth. And so the Founding Fathers understood we have to have the federal government print and coin money. Only them. But in 1913, on Christmas Eve, we passed the Federal Reserve Act and the income tax law, creating both the Federal Reserve and income tax. And now a private bank, not the U.S. government, but a private bank, prints and coins money. Thomas Jefferson was once asked after the Revolution. He was like, Ben Franklin. He was like a playboy, basically. He was like a partier. And so he's in the UK, and he was asked, hey, you got this fledgling country, and it's doing really well. Like, the amount of money and economic success it's having is really well. What's your secret to success? And Ben Franklin was like, well, it's easy. All of the money that you use in your government in the UK or in England at this time, all of it is borrowed from private bankers. We don't borrow from private bankers. Our government prints and coins money. And that means all of the wealth that's created is the wealth of the country, not of the bankers. And then we had the War of 1812. You know what it was about primarily? England being upset that we weren't borrowing from their banks, the private bankers. Yeah, the Fed screws everyone. That's exactly right. We used to have what was called greenbacks. Your currency used to be, before fiat currency, redeemable in gold. And think about how this works, right? Think about what money is. Like, go way back. Now listen, let me just say, please look into this information yourself. By no means am I an expert. But I'm trying to just tell you a complicated system in an easy to understand way. Because what they do is they make this stuff so complicated that they're able to convince you that you deserve to be screwed out of your money. Oh, you had to bail the bankers out. The banks were too big to fail. And they can tell you why. But they're lying to you. They're screwing you out of your money. That's what they're doing. They're redistributing wealth to their wealthy friends. Think of what money is, right? So go back to a barter system. You know, you have apples, I have a goat. My goat, I'll give you for 100 apples, right? Makes sense. Well, then you start to realize it's hard to walk around with a bunch of apples and goats, right? So maybe let's say you're the apple farmer. Instead of walking around with just bushels upon bushels of apples, you print out a little stamp or something. It says, this stamp is good for 1 apple. So you have 100, you have 10,000 apples, you print out 10,000 stamps. Then you go to market and you get your goat and you're like, here's 1,000 stamps. That's redeemable for 1,000 apples. I'll give this to you now and I'll take the goat home. Stop by my place later, bring these stamps or dollars or whatever you want to call them, and I'll give you your 1,000 apples. Right? Makes sense. What happens if you decide, well, I have 10,000 apples, but I'll print 20,000 stamps? Now, how much is a stamp worth? Half an apple. So when our Federal Reserve prints more money, what that means is your money is devalued. The more debt spending we have, the less the dollar's worth. When we have quantitative easing and lending people money at 0% interest rates, who does that benefit? The people that initially get that money are heavily benefited. Those are banks. Those are other extremely wealthy people. The people that get screwed are the people that don't get those loans. Now your money's worth less. That's why, even though you might seem to make more money than you did 10 years ago, they constantly talk about stagnant wages for the middle class. That's what's going on. Now, in addition to that, with the Federal Reserve, assume that you're a government or you're a house or whatever. You're some sort of entity. And you want to start to get the idea of money. And so you go to a bank and you say, hey, we're trying to run my new country I created here, but we need some money. You can't, for whatever reason, you decide you're not going to print your own money based on the wealth of the goods and services in the country. Instead, you're going to borrow from a bank. And so you go to this bank and you say, I'm starting up this new country. What I'm going to need is $10,000. And the bank says, okay, we'll give you the $10,000, but it's going to be at an interest rate. So at the end of the year, you owe us $11,000. We'll give you the $10,000, but at the end of the year, you have to pay us back $11,000. And so you say, okay. So you take the $10,000. Then you go and you distribute it however. You give it to your people in your country and they're spending the money and it works. And at the end of the year, the bank knocks on your door and they say, okay, it's the end of the year. You owe us $11,000. And you say, well, even if I collect every dollar I have, I only have $10,000. Where am I going to get the extra $1,000? And I don't really want to give you all this money back. We need to keep spending it. And the bank says, tell you what, here's what we'll do. We'll leave you keep that 10,000 in circulation, but now you owe us 12,000 next year. Now, eventually the bank wants repaid. What do they take? They don't care about the worthless money. The money's just a symbol. So what they say is, I'll tell you what, don't worry about that symbol. Don't worry about us giving the cash back. You like the cash. You keep spending the cash. But what we want is a portion of the goods and services. A portion of what the money represents. We want land. We want labor. And that's what they get. If every dollar in the United States today was paid back to the Federal Reserve, or I'm sorry, if we paid the Federal Reserve all the money we owe them back, how many dollars are in circulation? 0. Because all a dollar is an IOU. That's what fiat currency is. It's an IOU to the Federal Reserve. They printed the money. All it is they gave you an IOU. It says, you owe me $1. So when they hand you $1, thank you. That's an IOU that our government owes the Federal Reserve $1. Now we hand those IOUs around. But at the end of the day, they're still IOUs. And what that means is, it might be slowly, but that means that a portion of the value of our country, the goods and the labor, is going to these banks. It's going to the Federal Reserve. We will never be out of debt because of that. Now you might say, well, wait a minute. Isn't this an argument for socialism then? Because the Federal Reserve's not a government bank, it's a private bank. So shouldn't the government get involved? But the problem is, the government was the people that got us in the problem in the first place. The founding fathers were against these overarching socialist principles. They wanted a massively limited government. But they understood that's one area that we should have government involved, the printing and coining of money. Thomas Jefferson said that banks were more of a threat to our country than foreign adversaries could ever be. Go back and read this speech. I forget where it's from, but it's from William Jennings Bryan, who was running for office. And he gave this speech. It's a famous speech you talk about in speech comm classes. It's called The Cross of Gold. And he ends it. He says, "You will not crucify me on this cross of gold." What was going on in that speech? These private banks were furious at the United States ever since the founding fathers drafted the Constitution. They wanted a piece of the pie like they had in all the other countries. So when they kept getting rebuked, they started to get interesting strategies. Our currency was backed by gold. So the banks tried to hoard all the gold. They tried to buy up all the supply of gold and hoard it. Then they would artificially release and contract the supply of gold so that they could influence the value of the currency. So William Jennings Bryan, when he's running, he's proposing a silver standard because the banks hadn't bought it all up. I literally was taught this at university, and the professor laughed, and I got in trouble because he was like, "Can you believe that was the issue of the day?" I was like, "Yeah, it should be the issue of this day as well." And he didn't like me getting animated over gold versus silver standard. The Federal Reserve is not operating because we have a weak federal government. The Federal Reserve is operating with the permission and collusion of our federal government because it is an excuse to take your wealth, is what it is. Having a stronger government, a more invasive government, is not the answer. We should have a government that takes control back from the Federal Reserve and tell them to pound sand. We're not paying them back that money. But I digress. So, yeah, that's the deal. All of this, an hour and 10 minutes, to do with Warren telling that guy, of course you won't get your money back. My sound sucks? Is that true? Can someone just... Oh, not my sound, me. No, I just got a cold. Maybe it is the coronavirus. Which, by the way, people keep asking my opinion of that. I need to get more informed. Right, John Jacobs, that's exactly right. GDP keeps going up, the stock market's going up, but the middle class is eroding. That's exactly what they want. The middle class, particularly in first world countries like the United States, is the largest impediment to globalism, to a return, a neo-feudalism, where the powerful, the elite of the world make all the decisions and the rest of us rely on them for sustenance. That's what they want. Maybe I sound bad, Locke, but I think I'm still looking good. Yeah, Layman, I mean, there's a conspiratorial angle to that maybe Trump does want to crash so he can blame the Federal Reserve. But you could also go the opposite way. Maybe right before the election, the Federal Reserve encourages a crash and then blames Trump so he loses the election. John says, read my 2 posts above. Okay, I'll try. $1950 average household income was $3,300. A home was 222% of that income. A car was 45% of that income, and tuition was 18% of that income. Right? So it seems the number's way less, is what John's saying. You made $3,300, but you could buy a house with basically 2 years' salary. Right? You could buy a car with half a year's salary. You could pay tuition with 20% of your salary, a little less. Then he says, now let's look at today's numbers. By the way, John, could you post where you got these numbers just so people can check them out yourself? Because I can't verify this is true, but I know they're in the vein of being true. I don't know the exact numbers, though. Today, the average household income is $45,000 and change. A home is 470% of that income. So where it used to take you 2 years to pay off a house, now it takes you almost 5. And that's if you spent all your money. A car is 62% of your income instead of less than 50. And tuition is 119% of your income. That's where we're at today. And look, Tucker Carlson did a good segment the other day. By the way, Tucker's awesome. I don't care what any of you say. I think most people like them. Yeah, my wife made me trim up a little. Plus, I have to have short... The beard I could have long, I don't care. But I have to have short hair because I'm balding up top. And if it starts to get long, it just looks horrible. But what was I saying? That's the plan. They want massive government overreach. They want to erode national borders. That's why they're against terms like nationalist. That's why they're against national pride. That's why they think, it's offensive to fly the American flag. Oh, it's offensive for Trump to talk about America first. Oh, we got to worry about our allies around the world. Look, yes, I live in the United States. I think it's the greatest country in the history of the world. But if I was from, let's say, the Ukraine, I would want a president that cared about the Ukraine. If I was from the UK, I'd want leaders that cared about the UK. And insert every country. That's what we should reasonably expect. You should expect a government that's looking out for the people that live within that country. Just like if you take government out of it, take households. I reasonably expect every family to be looking out for their family first. That doesn't mean that they're unethically taking advantage of other families. But you're making money, you're not paying your neighbor's bill and leaving your kids go hungry. You take care of yourself and your family. They take care of themselves and their family. Then if there's people that fell behind, us through charitable means help take care of each other. But you're no good taking care of other people if you're not taking care of yourself or your family. It's the same with governments. But they want to erode that. They want globalism. And they understand the biggest stumbling block against globalism is self-sufficient people. People with personal rights, liberty, personal responsibility. They want to erode all that. And look, it's a devil's bargain. There is something to be gained by accepting their bargain. Just give up your freedom and we'll take care of you. Well, I'm unwilling to do that. You could live in a room by yourself and never leave the house, and your chances of being harmed are significantly reduced. But is that a quality of life? Do we need to go watch Braveheart again? Right? That scene where they're first fighting the English and they look outnumbered. And the guy says, we can't win against them. We're outnumbered. We'll run and we'll live. And what's William Wallace say? He says, you live. I can't do a good accent. But many years from now, when you're an old man and you're lying in your bed, would you be willing to trade each and every day you've had from this day till then for one chance at freedom? Now, I'm not talking about fighting people or arming ourselves. That's not what I'm talking about. But are you willing to give away all of your personal freedom to rely on a globalist government? Look at San Francisco. Look at LA. That's what they want. Zuckerberg living in a mansion while people live in squalor around him. But it's cool because Zuckerberg's willing to give them free syringes. He's willing to give them free bread lines. And he thinks, what a good person I am. I paid for them to have those needles. I paid for them to have a meal every day. I paid for the soup kitchen. Boy, am I a great person. That's how these people feel. Yeah, you're right, John. You're right. It's more of a bond than an IOU, but I am trying to simplify it. What are you reposting that? That it's more of a bond than an IOU. Yeah, you're right. But it acts in the same way in that they end up with more of the wealth. Every dollar they give you is then they get $1.10 in return, is the easiest way to look at it. Yeah, I know I'm ranting, John. Sorry. So now this is a good segue into the next topic, which maybe I'll upset some people with this one. I don't care, because this is something I see repeated over and over and over and over and over again. Anytime I do a video on Virginia, or if I'm watching, the people that went to Virginia and they're doing videos, I see this being a very prevailing topic, right? And you might think, based on my Braveheart speech there, that I would have the opposite point of view in this, but I don't. Let me just read some comments. I won't read someone's name or anyone's name, but so just my Virginia video that I did here yesterday. Let's read some of the comments on it. Oops. Sorry, I know I'm taking a minute. What do I think of the argument that people were cowards that showed up in Virginia because they didn't storm the Capitol building? I said, I disagree. That's a bad idea. Acts of aggression such as this are not justified at this time, nor will they be effective in the overall battle for our rights. Some of the comments I'm getting over and over. That's exactly what they are, cowards. Those, quote, patriots are a bunch of keyboard warriors that like to promote anarchy, but only if someone else does it for them. And the same will be said when they show up and take your guns. The media will say those things if you fight to keep them in your possession. So I guess that means there is nothing you can do since you fear how the media will paint you. You sent the message, you will comply. I've been saying the circle jerk about this rally is laughable. It did nothing but prove you will all comply. I was right, the red flag laws are still being pushed through. Do you think the cops would have fired that many armed people or just to keep the area fenced off? Cops would know it would be suicide. The rally didn't do jack because you will still comply. You will turn in your guns, etc. This is a prevalent mindset that's going on. That because the people that went to the rally didn't storm the Capitol building, didn't start firing guns in the air, didn't try to personally hogtie Ralph Northam or the Democrats that voted for this, that it was a failure, that they're cowards. I could not disagree with this mindset more. So first, let me make the pettiest, but still something I've been looking to get off my chest, argument to these people. How strong you are to call people cowards. You're right. They must be cowards. They didn't do anything. Oh, where were you? Mr. Tough Guy making that argument online. You couldn't be bothered to go. See, you want other people to engage in violence and potentially lose their freedom or lose their life, engaging violence for your cause, but you're unwilling to go yourself, aren't you? When people try to do things in a civilized and effective manner and go and show solidarity for supporting these rights, but do so in a civil way in which they're willing to have discourse with even they disagree with, you call them names. But you, meanwhile, couldn't even be bothered to go to Virginia, could you? Instead, you're going to call people cowards. Now, you could have done it, and some people have done it in a more couth manner, or that's not even the word, a less jerkish manner, and said, well, I still don't think it did much. I have no problem with the people that say that. But when you start calling people cowards that showed up, it just brings up an anger in me. Because you didn't do anything either. Now, aside from that, moving on to that, I've said this over and over again. The battle will not be won through violence. There's two ways to look at this. There is what is morally correct and then what is strategically correct. So let's start with the morality of it. Are you justified to use physical violence against Ralph Northam and the people connected to him, the Democrats, who passed the red flag gun law? I don't think you are. If and when people show up to your house and try to physically take your guns or jail you for physically taking them, then the situation may be different. But you do not have the right to engage in violence against people for political decisions, even if it is against your rights. Period. When that's enacted upon, then the story's different. Now, if you don't buy it, you might say, no, I disagree. As soon as you say that violence is justified in this instance, you are never, ever, ever permitted. Never again can you justifiably say anyone who ever commits political violence in any other situation is not justified. Because as much as you feel you have the right to enact violence on Northam for the red flag gun law, there is an Antifa member who feels they have the right to enact violence on you for wearing a MAGA hat and supporting Donald Trump. They feel totally justified. And you'll say, yeah, but I'm right and they're wrong. That's what they'll say about you. And now we've set the benchmark that everyone's morally justified if they feel their rights are being infringed based on politics to use violence against their opponents. What does that look like? What's that world look like all of a sudden? Now, I know a bunch of people think that they want to see some sort of violent revolution, but you don't want to see that. Look at the French Revolution. Read the book A Tale of Two Cities. It's not smooth like you think. It's not going to be, well, Second Amendment defenders like the guns, and so they'll just wipe out everyone else, and it'll be an easy victory. Case closed. Not only is that an oversimplification and just not true, but the people that are, quote, on your side will turn on each other at times too, because revolutions like that are chaotic. Now, I know what you're saying, but the Founding Fathers. But the situation was different. We are not at the point that the Founding Fathers were at. I'm not saying that you could never use political violence. But 99.99% of the time, it is unjustified. And the only way it is justified is if you are 100% sure that there is no other possibility to solve the issue. That's it. Once you start saying, I think there's enough. You've justified everyone. Now you've said, so let's say we all come to a consensus. Yes, this is the time. Violence is justified. Clearly, then, the people that disagree with us are now immediately also justified in violence because they know we're coming at them with violence. So now they're justified to arm themselves and come at us with violence. Preemptively strike, so to speak. That's it. Let's see what people are saying. I'm sure there's people disagreeing with me. Right, BBW. Let them make the first move. Exactly right. Now, I'm just talking about the morality right now. I'll get to the strategic level in a second. Johnny 5, what'd you say? Are they justified? What? I missed what you're saying. Are they justified about? Yes, I understand the argument. Well, if we leave them incrementally past these laws, eventually we'll be too late. But then again, You're getting to a situation where it says you, based on your fear of what will happen in the future, that they will literally come into your house and take your guns, means that you need to preemptively act violence now. That is the exact same justification that's given to why it's okay to go after the Covington High School kids, why it's okay to punch people in the face for wearing MAGA hats. Because hypothetically, in the future, Trump could come and try to round up black people. He passed, right? And they'll say this, oh, Trump had he's putting kids in cages, so he might lock up more brown people. We got to stop him now. Oh, he had the Muslim ban, which wasn't a Muslim ban, but you see what I'm saying? You don't get the right to say, well, these people can't say that. That's batshit crazy. You don't get the right to say that because you are saying the same thing based on my perceived rights being infringed, which I agree with you about your rights being infringed, and I disagree with their interpretation. But I also understand once you give this justification for violence, you give the other side the justification as well. Yes, people have been attacked for supporting America or Trump. When you are attacked, you have the right to defend yourself, period. You don't have the right to say, I think eventually, because other Trump supporters have been attacked, I now have the right to enact violence on people I think might attack me as well because I'm a Trump supporter. Oh, okay, John, we'll see you. Now, let's talk about the strategic level of this. And this is what I tell my friends on the left. Look, understand, again, I say this a lot, but I have friends on the left as well. This is what I tell my friends on the left. You have all these causes that supposedly the left's concerned, climate change or Black Lives Matter, all this stuff. You have to understand, when you act in violence to achieve your goals or your cause, is that strategically helping your cause? So let's take Black Lives Matter. All right, as an example. Now, Black Lives Matter to me is founded on a lie. Or I don't even know if, lie's the word. That is the word. And that lie is that we have an epidemic of racist cops shooting unarmed black men. That's not true. The best study on this was done by Democrats, I believe a black man for what it's worth, at Harvard University that showed that actually there is no correlation between skin color and being unarmed and shot by the police. In fact, although it was in the margin of error, you were more likely, based on their study, to be shot as a white man that was unarmed than a black man. So it's based on a lie. However, there is this kernel of truth, right? There are corrupt police. How many? What's the percentage? Clearly nowhere near what these people in Black Lives Matter are arguing. But they exist. And there's been bad shootings by police officers as well. And a lot of times they get away with it. Now, I know police officers personally that are like, yeah, I have no problem with you protesting it. Absolutely. Law enforcement officers should be held to at least the same standard as us, if not a higher standard. Everyone, regardless of skin color, regardless of gender, you could be like, yeah, police corruption's a bad thing. Maybe we should have marches focusing on that. I think it's exaggerated what they say, but fair enough. No one begrudges that cause. Then what do they say? Well, we don't want white people in our cause. White people need to shut up and leave black people talk. We're talking specifically about black people. This flag is the flag of a country that's a racist country. That's what Kaepernick said originally, remember? Now you had all these allies, these people in the middle of America, reasonable people. Maybe not people that are researching police brutality that much. Maybe not people that are heavily invested in going out and marching, but people that were just average, normal Americans that were like, yeah, I get behind that. We should do a little more about police brutality. Now what do you think they think? They're like, shut the hell up, Black Lives Matter. Then they're rioting. Then they're beating people. Then they're shouting about killing police officers. They're saying it's all about race. They've lost the plot. All of these potential allies they had that would have worked with them that actually could have had political momentum are like, you know what? We want nothing to do with Black Lives Matter. Now it's so bad that most people, like, what are they doing now? Blocking traffic and stuff. You're on your way to work. The climate change people do this as well. Maybe you're someone you're like, yeah, I think we should, I'm just an average Joe. I don't know much about climate change, but yeah, we should be doing more to help the environment. Then you're on your way to work and a bunch of psychopaths are blocking the street, so you're 4 hours late to work. You think you're going to be like, well, they have a good point. You're going to be like, who are these people? Get out of the road. Shut up. I hate you. Now those climate change people have lost a bunch of potential allies. So do you think in the same situation when it comes to gun rights, there are millions of people that are uninformed or they're just not that interested in the subject, but they're willing to hear both sides? Do you think that if Patriots would have went in there, guns a-blazing, stormed the Capitol building, strung up Ralph Northam, do you think that those people would have said, wow, these gun rights activists seem like some reasonable people. They have a point. They should all be allowed to keep their guns. No, they would have said, these are psychopaths. Take their guns away. Yep, the governor was right. Instead, tens of thousands of people with tens of thousands of guns showed up, and it was one of the most civil, polite rallies you could imagine, thereby debunking the media and Northam's claim that it would be violence. It's not just about, well, the media is going to smear you anyway, so you might as well. That's not the audience I'm talking about. I'm talking about those millions of people that are on the fence or uninformed about the rights. Or all they hear is the media story. Then when they can see it with their own eyes, when people like me or people like the Patriots were there, were showing and filming and telling everyone, this is what happened, here's the truth of it, we start to win more. Why do you think the media is pushing so hard, even now, after how civil and nonviolent that rally was, to paint it as bigots and violence? Why do you think they're doing that? Are they just that stupid? Is that what you're saying? Or could it be that the media correctly knows that if there was violence, it would be a huge benefit to them? That's what's going on. Our job is someone, I don't care what your political goal is, what policy you're advocating, what party you're from. You should accept every bit of help you could get from people that are willing to agree with your cause. If you're pro-Second Amendment and that's your big issue, you shouldn't say, yeah, but I'm unwilling to accept help from this group because they're a socialist group. Disagree with them on their socialist policies. But when they're defending the Second Amendment, you say, yes, I defend the Second Amendment with you. Well, I believe in the Second Amendment, but I'm against gay marriage. So an LGBT group that was furious after the San Bernardino shooting, when an Islamic terrorist shut up a gay nightclub, what's one of the things that happened in Orlando after that? Scores of people in the LGBT community were starting to get informed about gun rights, starting to take gun safety courses, starting to purchase firearms to defend themselves, because the Democratic Party at the establishment level let them down. Not only did they encourage this sort of extremist Islamic ideology, and again, I've said it before, my religion's just being Christ-like. If you're a Muslim and you act Christ-like, that's fine. One of the best people I've ever met in my life is a Muslim. Wouldn't begrudge an LGBT person. What you would say, oh, but that's not following their religion then. Whatever, I don't care. I don't care much about organized religion. I'm just saying I don't instantly hate someone based on their religion, whatever it is. I judge you by your actions. But anyways, this ideology, Islamic extremist ideology, political Islam, that we see in so many countries that say that homosexuality is to be not just not allowed to be married, but it's punishable sometimes by death. When that ideology is basically oh, you can't criticize that, said the Democratic Party. How would you feel if you're in the LGBT community and you're like, hey man, we've supported the Democrats for years. It turns out they don't give a hoot about us. So they start getting gun rights. What would it help us then as people that want gun rights to say, no, we don't want you because we disagree with your sexuality? That's ridiculous. Now, I'm not saying people were doing that. In fact, most of the patriots I saw there did the opposite. They showed all of these groups. There was Black Lives Matter people there that were saying defend gun rights. They didn't say, get out of here. We don't agree with Black Lives Matter. They said, hey, as long as you're being nonviolent and you're supporting rights while you're here, sure, feel free. That's what the rally showed. It showed civility, solidarity, the fact that tens of thousands of people were willing to go there to defend their rights, the fact that there are millions more back home that agree with it. Now, will things work out our way? I don't know. But I'm doing what I think is the most moral and strategically best thing that we could do, which is trying to inform people. The battle will not be fought with firearms. The battle will be fought with information. Swalwell's wrong. If the prevailing orthodoxy, if the mainstream narrative becomes the government's trying to be tyrannical and taking Second Amendment rights, then we will win. If the narrative is allowed to become guns rights advocates are nuts that are dangerous, then they'll win. I don't care how many guns you have. You think, no, I'll win. Even if it won't be pretty. You might win. It'll be a Pyrrhic victory, though. That's the best thing we could do, is to get the information out there, to show people we're not just saying things. Judge us by our actions and not words. We judge you by the content of your character, not by your race like the other side does. We say that you should have personal liberty because we trust you as a person, not the other side. They say that you're all dangerous or inept people that the government needs to take care of. We judge you as an individual. The other side judges you as a group of a collective. We're willing to listen to people that disagree with us and engage in debate and free speech. The other side is not. That's how we win. Does that guarantee we win? No. But I'll tell you what loses immediately going into Northam's government mansion with your guns blazing. See you, Johnny. And Eldon may be leaving. Yeah, people that do propose violence on the left and right have a lot in common. You're absolutely right. Furthermore, that's what I'm saying. Every argument right now, if you're thinking, I'm a right winger and I think violence is justified, every single argument you could make, literally there's a left winger sitting there saying the exact same thing. Now, spoiler alert, this debate I'm going to do at 4:00, right? This is basically my big argument against it. Again, the topic is basically something to the effect of this. Should it be illegal to advocate for socialism? Now, I think if you watch the first hour and 15 minutes of this, it's clear that I don't have a great love for socialism, though I'm not total anarchist either. But despite that, I'm a free speech advocate. The best argument against that idea is this. If I say yes, it should be illegal to advocate socialism because socialism would harm the country, I have no right to disagree with someone that says, well, I think that capitalism will harm the country and therefore it should be illegal to advocate for capitalism. Now what you've done is you've set up a system where however the majority feels, we'll just have a vote. If 51% of people are capitalists, then the 49% of socialists go to jail. If 51% are socialists, then the 49% that are capitalists go to jail. Because we've set up the condition and said, if you advocate a policy that it is agreed upon would be bad for the country, you now go to prison. That's insanity, as far as I'm concerned. And I'm saying that as someone who doesn't like socialism. In this context of gun, if I say infringements on my rights, like we're seeing now, justifies me enacting violence, then I have no reason to disagree when someone says, Trump is infringing on my rights as well. He's putting kids in cages. Therefore, that justifies violence. I've seen this. That YouTube debater, Destiny, that I debated, literally one of the arguments he makes is DACA citizens are morally justified to enact violence on Trump supporters because Trump supporters want to see them be forced out of the country. How isn't that argument as is true? Well, you want to vote to have red flag laws, therefore that's taking away my rights, therefore I could use violence. The DACA people would say, I live here, you're trying to kick me out of my home, therefore I'm justified in using violence. Same argument. It was crazy when that guy made it, that YouTuber. It's crazy now. But I keep seeing this over and over again. Now listen, let me be very clear. If you made that argument, I think you're wrong, and I passionately think you're wrong. Does that mean I think you're an immoral person? No, I'm not saying that. Again, I tell you all the time, we're going to disagree on things. That's fine. Now, if you made that argument and you say you're all cowards because you didn't do X, then you're a hypocrite because you also didn't do X. It's one of the big ironies to me. I have people say this to me all the time. oh yeah, you have a problem with all this stuff. What are you doing about it? I don't know. What are you doing about it? Well, clearly if you're saying our rights are being infringed and you're a coward for not storming the Capitol and doing something about it, then you believe our rights are being infringed and yet you're not doing anything about it. Look at the insanity of Charlottesville. That violence to this day is being used to smear every single person who has a conservative viewpoint and wants to have a rally. Even if you have no connection with any of those Unite the Right people, just like the Virginia rally. What do they say? Every article was like, Virginia rally ... like Charlottesville. Virginia rally ... Charlottesville. But that's what you wanted? You wanted people to go in with guns a-blazing? You don't want that. And I'm not a veteran, but I believe the people in here that are saying, I've seen war, it's hell. That it is. Thank you, John. I'm glad you have a better connection now. I mean, it does seem impossible to get along. But it's not, and I'm pessimistic about a lot of things. But there is some hope. And what's that hope? We lead by example. We treat other people like we'd want to be treated. We don't go around saying we need violence for X, we need violence for that. We say we have the better arguments. We judge people in the morally correct way, based on their actions, based on their thoughts. Well, not thoughts, really. Actions. And we win based on that. And, all you need to see, there are plenty of people out there that'll say, I was a lifelong Democrat. And now I see how insane they've gotten. So it is possible. There is no guarantee of victory. I mean, tyranny will never be defeated, So we'll see. All great countries have fallen in the past. We could be heading the same way. The question is it now? Is it thousands of years from now? Hundreds of years from now? Who knows? But I know that the morally right thing to do and the strategic right thing to do is not to be running around screaming about the need for violence. So, any other topics that people wanted to talk about today? I'll be willing to take audience questions, opinions, subjects that they might want to hear. But I hope that I made that clear. If you went to Virginia, you did more than I did. Thank you for going. And don't listen to the people that say, oh, you're a coward because you didn't do exactly what I would have wanted. That's garbage. It doesn't do anything. It just dissuades people from coming together to support their rights in the future. Furthermore, Hager. Oh. Yeah. I'll also be voting for Trump in 2020. I mean, he's done some things that I don't like, but he's the best. I haven't seen anything, Bradley, about Trump's new water treatment plan. I think I read briefly on Twitter that the way the Democrats are spinning it, I can't speak to if this is correct or not, but I do know this. The way the Democrats are spinning it is, the water's going to turn to crap because he's rolling back EPA protections on water. I believe Omar said, let's see him come to Flint, or maybe it was Talib said, let's see him come to Flint, Michigan and tell the people that they don't have the right to clean water. I could be mistaken, but didn't that happen under Obama's EPA? Wasn't that a Democrat-ran city where that happened? See, this is exactly what I was talking about previously. So we have a big government program, the EPA. Okay. They're supposed to make sure we have clean water. They don't. Then when you want to make changes to the EPA, they go, you monster. How dare you? You want people to have dirty water. What are you talking about? Your EPA that you wanted under the Democrats were there when the water was dirty. Now, let me further rant about Flint, Michigan, because it's something that infuriates me. The race card and, this idea of, privilege and stuff like that is way played out. 99% of the time it's used, it's garbage. It's used to be a bigot yourself when you're using that. It's because you don't have facts. But let me tell you something. If Martha's Vineyard didn't have clean water, it would have been fixed. I'm not saying it's a race thing. It is a wealth thing, though. There is no excuse in this country with the amount of tax money that we take in, with the insane, frivolous spending on lobster tails or this project or that project, that we should have even one city where kids have to drink tainted water. It's a disgrace. I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat. A disgrace. We're worried about sending weapons to the Ukraine to fight Russia because of the insane McCarthyist in the Democratic Party and the establishment that want war with Russia, but we can't afford to get clean water for people? Yeah, and isn't any surprise done playing around? Places like Monsanto with the fluoride that they've been putting in the water? Of course. Anything to save a buck. The faux morality, that's what I'm saying. Now, I don't know about Trump's new plan. I haven't read it, so I'm not going to... It could be garbage. I don't know. But I'm not going to listen to the faux morality of Democrats trying to use this as somehow, oh, we really care about kids and clean water, and it's Trump. You had your chance. You failed. Shut up. Seth Rich, Julian Assange. Sure, I'll talk about that. So I did this video on Glenn Greenwald and Bolsonaro, and I had people give me grief because they don't like Greenwald. Fair enough. I'm not a big fan of John. All right, John, I'll have that debate with you if you want. No problem. We'll set it up sometime. We will. But Julian Assange is a better version of Glenn Greenwald in that I think he did more. And Glenn Greenwald's been shady in some things. But the principle is that, doesn't it always seem... Think about this. Let's take Glenn Greenwald for a minute, right? Or Julian Assange, either one. Now, maybe they committed crimes. You know, maybe they did. What are the chances, though, that the only journalists that we seek to jail or government seek to jail are the person that did Snowden and the person that did WikiLeaks? What are the chances? All the leaks that came from the FBI, the CIA, from John Brennan, from Clapper, from all those people, from James Comey, all these illegal leaks that went to media members, that published the media, that published these leaks, that did all sorts of unethical things, being mouthpieces for the CIA, being mouthpieces for the FBI. All of these so-called journalists, probably hundreds of them. None of them get in any legal jeopardy whatsoever for any of that. But the two that criticize the government, they both end up getting in legal jeopardy. What are the chances of that? So yeah, I get it. You don't like Glenn Greenwald. I had someone tell me, yeah, well, he's gay. Okay. So? Well, he's terrible. He's a socialist. Maybe so. That's more relevant, but so? If we're unwilling to defend people we ideologically disagree with, then we have no business criticizing the other side when they're like, it's okay for the CIA or the FBI to selectively go after Trump. We should hold ourselves to the standard that we'd seek to hold the people we disagree with to. Now, is Greenwald, people told me this situation's not as it seemed. Maybe Greenwald did break the law. Maybe so. Maybe he did. I don't know. I'm willing to say perhaps I was misinformed. I'm not claiming to be an expert in this situation. I'm just saying our gut reaction should be to be skeptical anytime we see a journalist or someone publishing information about potential government corruption that's then jailed for it. We should be skeptical. That's it. It's a travesty that Julian Assange is rotting away in prison. It's clear that his crime was outing the establishment in the United States. It's clear. And Trump should have done more for Julian Assange. He should have. And I'm not just saying that because Assange sought to out the ridiculousness of the Russia collusion hoax. Seth Rich, I don't know. I haven't seen proof that the Seth Rich conspiracy theory is true. But it very well could be. And let me say two things. For those of you who don't know, Seth Rich was kind of a Bernie supporter, DNC staffer. It's alleged that the WikiLeaks came from him. There's good evidence that I've seen from people showing that download speeds would have made it near impossible for hackers to remotely get the DNC server, that the download speeds were so fast that it looked like it was from a USB, so an on-site transfer of information. Seth Rich was then leaving the office. He was clearly up. We know this for a fact. He was upset about the treatment of Bernie. We know he had access to the information. We know that he was leaving his office and was supposedly mugged and murdered, but no one took anything of wealth, including his wallet and things like that. We know that there's no suspects, and the case into his murder is just gone. We know that Julian Assange, who, as far as I know, WikiLeaks hasn't been shown to be distruthful yet, and he blatantly said he did not get this information from Russia, and he's alluded to the fact that he got it from Seth Rich. Now, all this points to maybe this Seth Rich conspiracy theory is true. However, in the interest of fairness, I don't have proof that it's true. But I'll say two things. One, there's as much proof that I've seen that the Seth Rich thing's true as there is the official version, which is that Russia hacked the DNC in Podesta. Have you seen the proof? I've heard the media say it's true. I've heard the FBI say it's true, but I haven't seen the proof. Have you? I know I'm told that I'm un-American or a terrible person if I question that narrative. Didn't these, and here's the second point. Or wait, no, this is still in the first point. I know the FBI is clearly out to get Trump. I know they broke protocol 17 times, and with the FISA courts admitted at least 2 of the FISA applications were illegal against Carter Page to spy on Trump's campaign. I know I've seen Comey and Brennan and Clapper and all the heads of the intel agencies prove over and over again on national television that they're vehemently anti-Trump and will do whatever it takes to get him out of office. So excuse me if I don't trust them when they say, oh, no, it was a hack. The Seth Rich stuff's garbage. Sorry, don't believe you. It could have been a hack. I don't know. But I'm not going to just take their word for it. I've seen just as much evidence for the Seth Rich thing, if not more, than I have for Russia hacked. Period. The other thing is this, and I can't stress this enough. You might believe in the Seth Rich conspiracy. You might believe the moon landing was fake. You might believe in flat earth. Maybe you think they're turning the frogs gay. I won't make fun of you. And you want to know why I won't make fun of you? Because the prevailing narrative in this country right now as we speak is that the most important prisoner in the past 50 years, maybe 100 years, to be taken into federal custody, a man by the name of Jeffrey Epstein, apparently tried to kill himself. But for some reason, 2 weeks later, he wasn't on suicide watch. There were no cameras inside his cell. 2 guards fell asleep at the same time. The cameras that were outside the cell malfunctioned at the same time, at least 2 of them. The lignature marks don't match up with the supposed noose that they found in his cell. And the video footage of his first suicide attempt has mysteriously disappeared. But trust them, it was a suicide. So when that's the prevailing narrative set by the FBI, set by Barr, the Attorney General, Trump's ally, pushed by the mainstream media, if I have to swallow that crap from that crew, I ain't going to make fun of anybody for any conspiracy theory they believe in. At all. Period. Seth Rich is one of the more believable conspiracies. But even, you come on and talk to me about Chupacabra, I'd say, yep, makes more sense than the Epstein thing. It's that simple. Thanks, Michael Rondo. I appreciate it. Let's see. Yeah, and at the very least, Johnny, there should be justice for Seth Rich. Now, I understand that his family thinks that he's being used as a political pawn by people, that are pro-Trump or that are anti-intel agency, and that's fine. They have the right to believe what they want. Regardless if he was the source of the WikiLeaks or not, it's a shame that there isn't a bigger move for justice for him, isn't there? You would think that a DNC that actually cared about their staffers would be doing more to make sure that the murder of one of them would be solved. But it's just the opposite. They want to bury it. Thank you, BBW. I appreciate it. Yeah, done playing around. That's exactly right. And our enemies do have infinite resources. That's one of the things you have to understand. Being in rural Pennsylvania, when I go to these Republican meetings, people are convinced that Trump's just going to easily win. It'll be a landslide. That's not the case. You have no idea, if you think about it, the power that the people he's going up against have. One of the things you'll hear, if there's an establishment, if there's a deep state, why did they leave Trump win in the first place? Well, they're not all powerful. And their downfall was hubris. If it appeared to the average person, not the average person, not a normal American, if the elite class, if it appeared to them like Donald Trump even had a chance, then they would have done more to make sure he couldn't win. But they thought they had it in the bag. And so they were shocked. So maybe this time they don't take any chances. Maybe this time we get more illegals to vote. Maybe this time the Diebold election machines come out in the favor of the Democrats no matter what. Maybe this time there's more unfounded rape allegations against Trump days before the election. Maybe this time they purposely crash the economy. Maybe this time they encourage some sort of violence to occur in the country that they can blame on Trump. Who knows? But you're mistaken if you think you could just sit at home on your laurels and that everything will work out well. That's not what's happening. Rob, do I have a Dive stream account? D-Live. I do not. I have BitChute. I'll look into D-Live. The problem, Johnny Five, if I could find out how to simulcast, I will. The reason that I still do stuff on YouTube is I tried to do stuff on BitChute exclusively. I get like 3-4 views. So I'm trying to stream in multiple platforms, so I'll work into that. Yeah, done playing around. Yeah, I don't have a problem with InfoWars. He gets a bad rap. Yes, I understand that he plays a character. He does. He hams it up. He's also trying to make a living, and he's sensationalized and trying to get views. I also believe what he said on Joe Rogan's show, which was that he used to think everything was a conspiracy until it started to hit home. And he was being inundated with claims that he's a CIA asset. And then he started to realize, like, whoa, maybe it's not as crazy as I've been believing. And I think he believes some far out there stuff that I don't believe in. But I ultimately think Alex Jones probably means well, and he's certainly been right about quite a bit of stuff. Alex Jones has been more correct by a landslide than the mainstream media on most issues. So if we have to take the mainstream media serious, why not Alex Jones? Yet for some reason they try to deperson him on the internet. Q. Q's worth talking about for a minute. I think Q's dangerous, is what I think. I think there's been good information to come out of Q. If I had to guess what Q is, it's this. It's someone close to Trump or a group of people close to Trump, and they do have a lot of inside information. But they convince people of things, of outcomes that are they claim are certain that aren't certain. Right? So it's like, don't worry, there's this big plan. We have everything solved. Trust in the plan. Everything will work out. And then when things aren't working out, people say, that's okay. The plan will work out. Not working out is part of the plan, is what people say. And so then things like this happen. Horowitz does an IG investigation into Comey, leaking classified information to the press. Horowitz recommends that Comey be criminally prosecuted. Bill Barr declines that prosecution. I'm furious. I say, listen, I'm sick and tired of this crap, of the crimes of the intel community be flaunted in front of our face while people like Comey laugh, knowing that their crimes are out there, but they brag and demand apologies, knowing that they'll never be punished. I'm tired of it. And what does the Q crowd tell me? Oh, trust the plan, Rob. Trust the plan. Sorry. Then I'll even hear this from Q. Plan. Well, actually, Q's admitted they have to put out disinformation sometimes. Now, think of the danger of what you're suggesting. I fully believe on faith a person or a group of people that admittedly are telling me lies sometime, but I believe whatever they say without any proof whatsoever, even if I know they're telling me lies sometimes. And I believe them when they say everything will work out, so I shouldn't get angry or get motivated when it seems that real criminals are escaping justice. Now, am I saying you're a bad person if you watch Q or Q doesn't have good info? No. But you shouldn't rely totally on faith on that stuff. I think a lot of it's wishful thinking. They just think Trump will solve all corruption. And here's what I ask Q followers all the time. What point will we get to where you're like, oh, okay, this wasn't part of the plan? If Trump doesn't win in 2020, or if he loses, will we be told, trust the plan? This was Donald Trump's plan. This was Q's plan all along for Trump to lose. Maybe then the Democrats win and they throw Trump in jail. Trust the plan. This is part of the plan. Trump planned to go to prison. Maybe he ends up dying. Trust us. That was part of the plan. I don't rely on people from any side telling me I need to believe them on faith. That doesn't mean they might not put out good information. That doesn't mean that me and that group, Q or whoever it is, don't have similar goals, that we want to see Trump succeed and this corruption be outed. That doesn't mean that I'm making fun of people that listen to it, because the people that listen to Q could legitimately make fun of some of the sources I listen to. I'm just saying, always be skeptical when people are telling you, believe me no matter what. One of the things I try to tell people is, don't believe me, verify. Look into the stuff yourself as well. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you, trust me, I know more than you. So sometimes I have to put disinformation out to my audience so that I could achieve the further goal. No. Is that it? Fuck Wolf? Am I swearing here? I don't think so. 9 months, is that the consensus now? I don't know. I've talked to Q people. Most of them say, yeah, if Trump don't win, then we'll know it was garbage. I mean, I don't believe that Trump plays this 4D chess like the Q says. I don't believe it. I don't at all. I just don't. They'll have you believe, like, for example, Trump says, which is a reasonable thing to say. I'm going to swear in a minute, so if you don't like swearing, sorry. Right? I'm going to say this. Trump said a closed-door meeting. He says, why are we taking all these immigrants from shithole countries? Some scumbag Democrat. Now, understand, politicians talk like normal people behind the scenes all the time. LBJ used to do press conferences on his toilet, right? But no one releases that stuff. So some Democrat who is less concerned about helping the country and the image of our country, he was more concerned about getting a PR victory against Donald Trump. He releases that info. Now, I'm supposed to believe from a lot of Q followers that personally told me, oh, that was part of the plan. Trump wanted them to leak that he said S-hole country. Garbage. No, he didn't. Now, he rebounded nicely. The Democrats proved themselves to be morons about the whole thing. But that's not 4D chess. That's that Trump's fortunate to be going against some of the dumbest political operatives in history. But they do have massive power. They do have massive propaganda. What's that? Yeah, BitChute I use. Most of my stuff goes on BitChute, but I don't know if my live videos go on BitChute. What do I think of Schiff crying during his speech on impeachment? I didn't watch much of the impeachment the last 2 days, but I've heard that he cried, and I would say it was similar to the end of his speech in the House. I mean, it's a joke. Adam Schiff has lied over and over again. Look, I say this all the time. We hear from fact checkers that Donald Trump lies like 5,000 times a day. They never tell you how. And when you actually look into the fact checkers, when they get to specifics, most of the time they're lying. So like they'll say something like this. Trump will say like, actually, the economy only increased by like 1.2% under Obama. And they'll say, that's not true. We looked in, and although Trump's correct that it only increased 2.2%, him implying that means that Obama did a poor job is wrong because he was coming off a depression and blah, 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 blah. So they'll say what Trump said was true, but the meaning behind what Trump said is not true. That's garbage. And a lot of lies Trump tells are stupid, inconsequential lies that are dumb. The biggest crowd ever. Okay. Adam Schiff called the President of the United States, many members of Congress, media people like Tucker Carlson, and people that support them, Russian agents. He said he had definitively seen proof to prove that. That was a lie. He spent 3 years telling you that. Adam Schiff said that trying to get dirt from foreign agents is impeachable, possibly treason. Yet I have audio of Trump thinking he's talking to Ukrainians or Russians, trying to get nude photos and embarrassing information of Donald Trump. We've all seen it. Schiff really, really was excited to get those Trump nudes. This guy has lied over and over. Is he castigated for that? Is he not welcome back on cable news shows? No, just watch the cable news. All they talked about the past 2 days was how awesome he is. Now, if I lie to you over and over and I say, I've seen proof, I've personally seen proof, that Adam Schiff is a Chinese spy. I've seen the proof. And somehow that gets investigated and people are like, yeah, that's not true. He's not a Chinese spy. And then I come back the next day and I say, okay, well, I've seen proof that Adam Schiff engaged in an improper phone call and abused his power. I've seen the proof. You'd say, yeah, hit the bricks, buddy. You lost your chance. But that's where we're at with Adam Schiff. And he throws in a few fake tears. Of course, they eat that stuff up. Have I seen Revealing Ukraine? I have not. I have to maybe... What's it from? Johnny 5. Let's see. Yeah, Lindsey Graham. Here's my feeling on Lindsey Graham. He talks a good game, but he doesn't do anything. I think Lindsey Graham's a really smart politician. But I also think Lindsey Graham's part of the establishment, sadly. So he understands, look, I know how to say the right things to get Trump supporters to have faith in me. Now, I don't know if he was engaged in some sort of corruption that Pelosi's and the Schumers of the world have him on, so he can't out their corruption because they'll out his. I don't know. But I know he's all mouth, and he never does anything effectual, just like the majority of the Republicans, by the way, which is one of the reasons I'll be running in 2022. What has your Republican representative done to stop the coup against Donald Trump? What have they done? Just voted against impeachment? That's it? Sorry, that's not enough. The Republicans, again, are on the defensive. And the average person, they don't know. The average person couldn't. I saw a video with Owen Schroyer, also from InfoWars. There's a lineup of people that says remove Trump on their shirts. R on one, then E. You get it. He says, what's Trump being impeached for? No one can say anything. Finally, someone says, Russia. And he's like, no. Though technically that's right. These people didn't know. They hate Trump so much they're out there protesting in D.C. They're wearing choreographed shirts. But they have no idea why Trump's being impeached. Millions of Americans feel the same. Do you want to watch the impeachment crap? Of course not. It's so boring. They don't know. All they know is, hey man, I get home and turn on my news and they say Trump should be removed from office. So then I turned on Jimmy Fallon. He says Trump should be removed from office. So I switched over to Jimmy Kimmel and he says Trump should be removed from office. So I went and watched the Marvel movies and all the stars of the Marvel movies, they say Trump should be removed from office. So I got on Twitter and Jack Dorsey and all the people that run Twitter, they think Trump should be removed from office. What about Facebook? Yeah, they think Trump should be removed from office. Well, then I went to university the next day to my college courses and they all think Trump should be removed from office. So I guess Trump should be removed from office. Where are the Republicans to say this is garbage? There's 5,000 things wrong with this story. They're nowhere. Once in a blue moon, they'll go on Sean Hannity's show or something and say something. They ain't reaching the average person. I'd be on the street in every town in my district telling them what's going on. I'd be going to other districts telling them what's going on. Straight to the people. I'd be going on CNN if they'd have me, or MSNBC, or any other of the garbage networks. Revealing Ukraine is a documentary by Oliver Stone. Oh, I'm aware of it now that you mentioned it. I didn't know the name of it. I did do a video with my friend SJG on the Stormfront Gathering. Or Storm Clouds Gathering. Not Stormfront. Storm Clouds Gathering where we went through, and it was very good, where it showed how the U.S. was basically backing extremist white nationalist groups to overthrow the Kunovich regime. And then they put in Poroshenko, who we now know was corrupt. According to all the State Department people, yep, Poroshenko was corrupt. Yeah, don't play around. That's a good list. Probably more. But yeah, all those people are rhinos. Do I think Graham could turn against Trump? Sure he could. Yeah. Rand Paul was warning about this. The Republicans will cave, as always. Look, understand this. Donald Trump's as much of a threat to the rhinos, to the establishment Republicans, as he is to Hillary Clinton or to Chuck Schumer or to Nancy Pelosi. Here's the dirty little secret. I remember back in the day, way back in the day. See, I'm a Pittsburgh Pirates fan. Baseball's probably my favorite sport, but I'm a Pirates fan. So I don't know what it's like to cheer for a team that wins, but you had the big rival in the 2000s of like the Red Sox Yankees, right? When the Red Sox finally came through and Kurt Schilling with the bloody sock and all of that. And you had like these, big faces on those teams. You had Derek Jeter and A-Rod and the Yankees, and then, Clemens was on the Yankees and Andy Pettitte, and then on the Red Sox you had Schillings and you had David Ortiz, and Johnny Damon at that point was on the Red Sox. And I remember that like the fans hated each other and it was a big thing. And then there was outrage because ESPN or something reported that there was video or pictures that were taken from some restaurant in whatever city they were in with like some of the Red Sox players eating dinner with some of the Yankees players. And basically they're like, look, the secret is the players don't hate each other most of the time. It's the fans. It's the rivalry, but players are players. They know it's a job, That's how these Republicans and Democrats are in the establishment. They'll pretend to fight. They'll pretend to argue. But really, their number one concern, more than anything, is maintaining their power. Their individual power and the power for their ideology. Which is globalism, which is taking power out of the hands of the average person. That's what they want. More power for them, less for you. The bigger the government gets, the easier it is for them to do. That's what they want. So any potential outsider, whether it be in 2016 Bernie Sanders or Jill Stein or Donald Trump, whoever, maybe even Gary Johnson, they don't want that person. Trust me when I tell you, there were many, many, many Republicans who spent years telling you publicly that Hillary Clinton was the worst thing that could ever happen to this country, that were chomping at the bit to vote for Hillary instead of Trump. Republicans. The person they said was the worst person that could govern, they were willing to vote for over Donald Trump. Why? Because there's an unwritten rule in the establishment. We back each other. We keep all potential outsiders out. Just us versus you. We could jockey for position ourselves, but we keep everyone else out. We come together to keep everyone else out that challenge our authority. Now, you might say, yeah, but Trump's a billionaire. He's not an outsider. I disagree, but fine. If you're a left-wing friend of mine and you believe that, fine, fair enough. Even if I concede that point, which I don't, but for the sake of argument, I'll concede that point. It doesn't matter if Trump really is an outsider. That's not what matters. What matters is, do they think he could be an outsider? See, let's say you're in the mob and you're rigging a horse race, right? And there's 8 horses in the race. Now you buy off 7 of them. The riders, the owners, you buy off 7. You tell them exactly what to do. Now there's an 8th horse that you weren't able to buy off. The horse isn't expected to do much. But you damn sure don't want that horse to win. Even if maybe they'll win and they'll still say, yeah, I'd like to work with the mob. Maybe they will. But you would rather not take the chance. No matter how slim, you don't want the chance. That's what Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders represented. Now, Bernie's done his damnedest to show the establishment, yes, I am part of you. I'll take my second lake house. I'll cheer for the intel agencies. Who spent my entire career complaining about troops being stationed overseas in foreign regime change wars. His entire career he spent doing that. I'll even go back on that and say we need to stay in Syria. Trying to bow down to his establishment. You see just today how he's groveling to Biden? Joe Biden, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that my supporters said bad things about you. He's doing his best. He's like, please, establishment. Because he knows he's going to get screwed over. Please, please pick me. I'll do what you want, I promise. I just want the power. That's what Trump represented. And that's what he still represents. That's why I voted for Trump. It wasn't that I thought he was a morally superior person. It wasn't that I thought he was a diabolical genius. I knew that Trump was a potential threat to these people, the establishment. And I knew the establishment would out themselves to try to take down Trump if he was elected. And that's exactly what happened. That's why I'll be voting for Trump again. Even though Trump's done some things I don't like. He's deficit spent way more than he should. And in that, he's pushed forth these omnibus bills that did things like funding places like Planned Parenthood and crap. He's bombed Syria. He's said things that I don't particularly like sometimes. But that was my number one thing. I also like the fact that he, for one, was someone who was willing to show the spineless Republicans how to fight back. When people constantly call you a Nazi, a bigot, a racist, blah, 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 and they just sit there and take it. So yeah, you think it's a coincidence that John McCain was pushing off the Steele dossier to the FBI? You think what Jeff Flake was doing was a coincidence? You think Mitt Romney and Murkowski and all them saying, oh, we have problems if McConnell just wants to quickly dismiss this. We have potential problems. You think that's an accident? You think all the leaks from even the people that Trump's appointed that are supposedly Republican, you think that's an accident? They don't want him. They'd rather have Hillary Clinton in a heartbeat today if they knew there was public support for it and they could keep their jobs in power. They would, in a heartbeat, say, Trump, you're removed from office. Hillary Clinton, you're in. In a heartbeat, they would say that. And they're supposedly Republicans. They don't care. They don't care about your Second Amendment rights. They don't care about the right, pro-life. They don't care about you having economic success. They don't care. They care about power. They care about stripping you of your power. They care about you being reliant on them. And by the way, the Democrats, they don't care about pro-choice. They don't care about kids in cages. They don't care about stopping gun rights. They don't care about any of it. All they care about is more power for them and doing what they can in order to achieve that in the quickest and most successful way possible. They'd flip on a second. I'll guarantee you. The establishment people, Republican or Democrat, they'd change their stance on abortion in a minute if it meant losing their job if they didn't. Guarantee they would. Joe Biden did it already. He's for the Brady Amendment. The Brady Amendment his entire career. Flipped on a dime because Alyssa Milano called him. They don't care. They're not principled. They will work together against Donald Trump because Donald Trump is a threat to their hegemony. He is a threat to their total control of the government. And that can't be tolerated. Now, they know they can't just come right out and say, if you're a Republican, if you're Mitt Romney, you can't come right out and say, yeah, screw Trump, vote Hillary. Screw Trump, vote Biden. They can't come right out and say it. What they do is they feign, oh yeah, of course I'm with Trump, I'm with the Republican cause, but I do have some questions. I'm troubled by this call to the Ukraine. I am troubled by it. That's how they do it. They know it's a sham. Every single person in Washington, whether it be the media class, the lobbying class, the unelected bureaucrat class, or the politician, they all know the Russia stuff was a sham. They know the impeachment's a sham. They know it. They're out there today, the Democrats are out there today talking about this GAO report. The GAO report said that Trump and his team broke the law when they withheld the foreign aid to the Ukraine longer than they were allowed. Darrell Issa was on Tucker Carlson 2 nights ago, from a Republican that was on the Ways and Means, I believe, committee, and said that the GAO 7 times found that Obama's administration broke the law, including the Bergdahl swap, including withholding aid from Egypt, including an EPA scandal. Yet not even one of... Do you remember Mitt Romney? Do you remember Lindsey Graham? Do you remember any of them suggesting impeachment for Obama? You remember any of the Democrats? Nope. Weird. Never forget, I say this all the time. Show me a crime that's been accused of from Trump or anyone associated with him, and I guarantee I could point to the Democrats doing it more blatantly or more severely, or the intel agencies. Either the Democrats lying to Congress, failing to register as a foreign lobbyist, lying to the FBI, obstruction of justice, blah, 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 on and on. Trump obstructed justice because he said he didn't like Mueller and wanted him to end his investigation. Hillary obstructed justice by deleting subpoenaed emails. Which one of that's more blatant example of obstruction of justice? Trump's being impeached for obstructing Congress. Hillary, no punishment. But never forget that FARA violation. Never forget this. Paul Manafort is sitting in solitary confinement in part because he failed to register as a foreign lobbyist when he was advocating and lobbying for former president of the Ukraine that was considered a pro-Russian president, right? The indictment of Paul Manafort said, in the exact same people, in the exact same crime, at the exact same time, right? This wasn't years later or with different people. Paul Manafort had partners doing the exact same crime. Mueller outlines them as Group A and Group B. Who is Group B? The Podesta Group. That's Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. The group that he founded and his brother. So you say, yes, of course, the Democrats do what they accused Trump associates of doing. Of course. And they got away with nothing. They were allowed to file out paperwork. But who was Group A? Don't forget, and we don't talk about this enough. Group A was Mercury LLC. Who is Mercury LLC? It's a lobbying firm that works almost exclusively with, drumroll please, establishment Republicans. Huh. Wait a minute. If it was just corrupt and it was the corrupt Democrats out to get the Republicans, why wouldn't they throw Mercury LLC under the bus? Almost like it's just Trump. And the establishment Republicans don't care. At all. They don't care. They want Trump taken down. Their goal would be, but it's, again, I say this all the time, they need to ruin Trump's name. They need to take away his support before they could throw him under the bus. Because if not, if they just come out and they're open with it, then all of a sudden the charade might be, the veil will be lifted. And millions of Americans will start to realize, you mean the establishment people in the Republican Party are garbage too? This two-party thing's a sham? That wouldn't be good for maintaining power. Now you would have millions of Americans that saw what the real story was. And they would be pushing for people that weren't part of that charade. So better to work behind the scenes. Leave the Democrats be the face of it. Work behind the scenes against Trump. Act like you're supporting him when really and behind the scenes you're not. And then once you could say, oh, well, trust us. We've defended Trump the whole time. But yeah, this corruption was a bit too much. And in order to be ethical, the GAO said he broke the law. Yeah, Obama did it 7 times. We didn't care about that. But, the GAO said he broke the law. So we have to be against Trump now. We have to do that. That's what's going on. Is violence ever necessary? Yes. If you maybe you weren't in here earlier when I said that. If someone personally comes to take your right to self-defense away, that's a different equation. It would depend on how it's going, though. But of course, violence is at some points necessary. Like, let me give you an example. If someone puts a knife to my throat, I'm justified in enacting violence back. If someone starts to attack my loved ones, I'm justified to put violence back. If someone smacks me around, I'm justified to use violence back. If I'm coming to be thrown in jail for something I didn't do, possibly, well, I won't even say that. If it's a last resort, then yes, violence is justified and your freedom and your rights are at stake. That's not where we're at now, though. So it's not morally justified, and I did like 20 minutes on why it's strategically not justified. But of course, the Founding Fathers did think that violence was justified. But all other options were exhausted. Why do you think it was such a controversial vote to declare independence? Because for years, they tried so many other options. And it was, not only was it then morally acceptable, but it also became the most strategically acceptable option. There is no case whatsoever to be had that going into Northam's mansion or going into the Capitol building in Virginia there with guns a-blazing and stringing people up was strategically the best move. At all. None. If you say sometimes violence is justified, therefore it's worth having that discussion here, you have opened the case to every single Antifa member that says, yes, and Donald Trump's putting kids in cages, therefore we're justified in violence. Every single one. You don't get to claim otherwise. You could say, but I disagree with you. Now it's a question of what you believe is right and wrong as far as the actual facts on the ground. But the justification for violence is there. Now we can't agree on anything about facts on the ground. For example, we can't agree if socialism or capitalism is better. We can't agree if a border wall is a good idea or not. So all you have to do is say, I'm assured I'm right, the border wall is wrong, it is immoral, it's stripping people of their rights, therefore violence justified. And we have a civil war. So that's my feelings on it. But could there become a point where violence is necessary over this stuff? Perhaps, but we're nowhere close. When we discuss, even the discussion of saying, yes, violence can be justified, will every time I'll be running for Congress, that clip that I just said to you there about violence sometimes being justified will be played over and over and over again saying, Rob's a violent thug. He thinks political violence is justified. He talked about the need for violence sometimes. It will be played verbatim. Every time we talk about it might be necessary in the future as a step in the wrong direction that we're losing. You'll know when your life's at stake if it's justified. 99.9999999% of the time, it is not justified. It is used for every one time that political violence was justified. There are literally a million times where political violence was said to be justified that it was not justified. So, yeah, it was stupid to say storm, as far as I'm concerned, to storm the Capitol building. But yeah, so I'm probably going to get going here. I think my brother's sleeping. I might play some Call of Duty or something before my debate here. Maybe I should get ready. Now, I'll tell you what I should do is clean up the house and let my dogs out and all that fun stuff. Is there any other subjects that people wanted to talk about here? I'll stick around till 2:30 if you guys don't mind. Huma Abedin, is she off the hook? Look, most people don't know this. Fuck Wolf. I feel dirty just saying that. Oh, Las Vegas. I will get to that before. Most people don't know this about Huma. We have dead to rights through FBI text messages that were released and emails of Huma Abedin that were released. Without a doubt, the FBI had proven without a doubt that Huma Abedin lied to them. She said she had, and Cheryl Mills, both of them said they had no knowledge of Hillary Clinton's server until after her tenure as Secretary of State. But emails released of them show that in 2009, they were fully aware of her private server. So they lied to the FBI, dead to rights. They were not punished. I'll get to Las Vegas in a second. Kevin says, the left is controlling the educational and mainstream media, and we're going to lose, I'm afraid. On top of demographic changes, I don't see us winning. So let's break that down. Let me start with demographic changes. Yeah, like illegal immigration's terrible. You have to be real specific, though, when you're talking about demographic changes. Like, we can't say that certain races or certain genders or certain age groups, all of those demographic things tend to vote a certain way or another. But it's up to us to reach out to those demographics, to do the best we can possible, to let them know that our side, the freedom side, the anti-establishment side, is actually preferable to any of those demographics. Now, yes, I understand that illegals, for example, are being promised free crap and they're going to vote Democrat because they're illegals. And that is a serious concern. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly what illegal immigration's about. Getting a bunch of people, making them believe that everyone that was in this country that was a native citizen is immoral and terrible. And then having the Democratic Party saying, we're the party for you, we care for you. That is what it's about. But the way we fight that back is the first thing you said, the educational and mainstream media. We have to fight back with intellectualism. We have to fight back with the truth. We have to fight back by getting the message out. That's why I hope you feel the same way. I try to do that. And why you should support people like me and other independent content creators. Even if you're on the left and you disagree with everything I say, find someone independent that's on the left. But the first thing we need to do is take away the total control of the narrative that the establishment has, particularly the establishment left. The more people see, the more you can out how hypocritical, disgusting, and tyrannical they are. Look, today, you know what they're doing today? Joe Rogan had Bernie Sanders on his show, right? Now, if you don't know Joe Rogan, I would say he's a liberal. He's a left-wing dude. Certainly no white nationalist. Go to Twitter right now, type in Joe Rogan, and you'll see tweet after tweet of Bernie supporters saying, Joe Rogan's a white nationalist. Why would Bernie accept the endorsement of a white nationalist? Insane. The more insane they become, the more it allows us to reach people like Joe Rogan and millions of people like him that are like, look, I'm not a total Democrat. I'm not a total Republican. I might lean one way or the other, but I'm not really set in stone one way or the other. Those are the people we could reach. That's the real silent majority. If we convince them how insane and tyrannical the other side is, then we stand a good shot of winning. It'll be a difficult battle. I agree. Immigrants do vote 80% Democrat. That's true. Absolutely. That's what illegal immigration's about. But you're starting to see a lot of legal immigrants. The Hispanic vote, for example, with Trump. I mean, some numbers have it as high as 40%. How can that be? He's locking up brown children. He hates He hates Hispanics. Well, because a lot of legal immigrants understand the insanity of illegal immigration more than us that aren't immigrants, because they know what it was like to go through the system. It's very important, even if the legal immigrant tends to vote Democrat, it's very important to illustrate the difference. Legal immigrants tend to be pro-American. For example, oftentimes when you hear of Islamic terrorism, domestic Islamic terrorism in our country, it's second generation. Why? Because you had immigrants that came from some crappy country like Iran that were fleeing the insane abuses there. So they appreciate. Look at the Muslim that's running against Ilhan Omar. Her name's Al-Sidi. This is exactly her story. She came from Iraq. She remembered what it was like under Saddam Hussein. She remembered the oppression. She remembered being mistreated as a woman. She comes to the United States and sees how great it is. Then she sees someone like Ilhan Omar saying, I speak for all Muslims, blah, 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 blah. How horrible the country is. She says, no, it's not. You don't speak for me. This is the greatest country in the world. Now, is it still the majority of immigrants vote Democrat? Yeah, I think so. But understand there's a difference between legal and illegal immigration. And the more we show those groups, we should still be reaching out to those legal immigrants. We should be reaching out to the black community. We should be reaching out to single women. We should be reaching out to young people. We don't have to change our message. Our message is the right message. We just need to reach out to those communities and let them know why our message is good for them as well, because we treat them as individuals. We treat them as adults that can have personal responsibility and liberty. Does that mean that, we do that and all of a sudden 80% black vote Republican? No. But you start to make inroads. That's better than just being antagonistic now. But certainly we need to solve the illegal immigration crisis. It's certainly a sham designed to depress wages, designed to destroy the middle class, to overburden the country, and to get votes for the Democratic Party. That's certainly the truth. Las Vegas, it's been asked several times. I don't trust the FBI on anything. I know this. I'm supposed to believe, let's take the Democrats' position on the FBI. And you've heard me rant and rave and scream about this. Go to my Twitter page. It's my top video on the profile. You can hear me scream at the top of my lungs for 4 minutes about this. The Democrats' narrative about the FBI after the Horowitz IG report is this, that the FBI is so incompetent that they didn't know you're not supposed to change evidence to say the exact opposite of what it actually says when trying to spy on a presidential campaign. They just didn't know. It wasn't corruption. It was just incompetence. Okay, let's say I believe that, Democrats. How would I trust them to investigate the largest mass shooting in the history of the United States? Why would I believe anything they said? Why would I have any faith in them? And that's if I believe the Democrat and the FBI narrative. If I believe the truth, which is they're corrupt, then why would I listen to them in Las Vegas? It seems clear to me that that shooter was probably operating within the knowledge of the FBI in some capacity or another. I don't know exactly what happened. I don't trust the FBI at all. At all. I'll tell you this much. I'm not going to judge anyone who looks into it. And it's certainly ripe for conspiracy. The non-conspiracy angle is this. Once more, the FBI proves their total uselessness. When it actually comes to protecting us or investigating the worst situation, they come up blank. Now, I'll guarantee you, if he shot up a rap concert or an Obama rally, they would have pinned it on a right-winger right out of the gate. But it was a country music festival, so, we don't know. We don't know what the reasons are. No clue. Yeah. We don't know. If I had to guess, here's my best guess. I don't have proof of this, but my best guess is that this person had a working relationship with the FBI in some way. It could have been that the FBI, like they routinely do, was setting up a potential domestic terrorist only to arrest him at the last minute so they could say, yay, we're doing our job. It's incredible how many terrorists that the FBI arrests that actually the only reason they got to the point where they're terrorists is because the FBI led them by the hand the entire time and radicalized them. So maybe they radicalized this guy and then lost control and he ended up shooting up people before they could arrest him. So now they have to cover it up. Maybe it was a false flag designed for gun control. Maybe not. Maybe this guy was just a nut. I don't know. But I know it's further proof of how worthless the FBI is. And I know damn well that there would be screams from the establishment and the media if this had been perceived left-wingers that were shot up in the largest mass shooting event. Guaranteed. They don't care. They don't care. It doesn't fit their narrative. Bump stocks. That's the only thing they cared about this. Look, I was talking about this the other day. Right, assault weapon. What is that? One trigger, one pull. Okay, so like every handgun? No. They don't know. What would I say if the Senate votes to remove Trump with no more evidence than's been provided now? I would say that it would be time for we would have to organize in a massive way. If people didn't organize in a massive way, I would probably, at that point, find some way to full-time be leading people to understand the coup that just occurred in this country and doing something about it. I'm not saying violence. I'm saying letting them know that there is massive, massive, massive unacceptances. And if they did do that, there would be. There would be riots in the street. There really would be. I would encourage it to not be riotous, but I would encourage mass civil disobedience. Just real quick back to Vegas, though. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Now, is it my fault that maybe my mind wanders conspiratorially? Is that my fault? The Democrat, I got a tinfoil hat. They put that clip. Did you ever see that clip of Alex Jones where he's wearing the tinfoil hat and he's like this? That's what they would say about me, right? Is that my fault? I think it's the fault of an agency that says Jeffrey Epstein killed himself. That's what I think. I think it's the fault of an agency who have its leaders on all of the cable channels 24/7 talking about why Trump needs to be removed from office. I think it's the fault of an agency that 17 times broke protocol and the law in order to spy on a president and his campaign before he was president. That ain't my fault. That's their fault. They should be judged by their track record, which is pathetic. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a hand in it. Do I think it's beyond an organization led by James Comey to actually actively encourage some sort of shooting to benefit themselves? Not really. It wasn't beyond the CIA to lie about Assad gassing his own people to encourage missiles to be sent. And if you think that makes me a terrible person for thinking, you ought to ask yourself how someone who seemingly, I seem pretty reasonable on most issues, right? How someone seemingly reasonable on other issues could have such a low opinion of the FBI. It isn't my fault. So, all right, well, it's 2:30. So here's the plan. I am doing a debate at 4 o'clock with a follower of mine. So regardless if you agree with me, don't be rude to him. I think it's cool that he's coming on. And I love having disagreements. So that debate will be about, and I'll leave him put it in his own words, but should it be illegal to advocate for socialism? I'm against that. He will be for that. But I'm going to try to be very cordial and leave him have his say. But I am going to disagree. That's something I disagree on. So that'll be at 4 p.m. So in an hour and a half here. So that gives me time to go clean up a little and get stuff ready here. But yeah, I don't know if he'll be using his face or anything like that, but it should be fun. And hopefully if you see it and you like it, maybe you disagree with me or want to have a discussion about something. I know John Jacobs, I'll get in touch with you if you're still on here. If you want to talk about the need for domestic terrorism, I'd love to have that debate with you. So, but thank you all for being here. So just to put myself out there, beg for your support just real quick. Please consider, look at the description there, following me on Patreon or PayPal, supporting me on there. I try to be incredibly open about where that money goes. It will go things like hardware, like I need a new computer. I'm just running this off a laptop. I'm trying to get a PC that I could actually keep it at the house here. And then I could get more software, editing. I got lighting coming, things like that. I'd also be using that money non-equipment wise to go to things like rallies and do things like that. I currently work like 80 hours a week. So if I got to the point where I could be using this to be more full-time into my channel, that would be great. If you don't have money to give, that's perfectly fine. I'm not going to stop my channel. You can support me in other ways or not support me. It's fine. You could be here and not support me. Totally fine. But yeah, if you do support me, I try to give you shout outs. I try to let you know exactly where that money's going in ways like that. In that vein, there was someone from my chat 2 days ago named Ramsey, who donated to me on PayPal. Thank you very much. And then I have a new Patreon. My third Patreon, Killer Kyle. If either of you are here, thank you so much. I'd like to give a shout out to Milo and Dib. I saw Dib was on here earlier that are also patrons of mine. And then also give a shout out to people in real life that have helped me out, particularly lately my friend Chirby, who's done an incredible amount of work for no return on my channel, audio equipment, things like that. So, yeah, I might build my PC, though I won't be doing it, but I might have a friend build it for me. So, but I'm going to try my best on that. Thanks to my brother for moderating and other people. I really, really appreciate all the support. Thank you all, regardless if you're new to my channel or old. Thank you all for your support. I'm humbled that so many people would tune into me. I really am. It's a great thing. It really is. It makes me feel good. So I hope that people appreciate what I'm doing. I am trying my best to put hours upon hours of content out every week. So I hope that that's showing that I've really picked up the pace here this week. And I plan to try to continue that. I can't say it'll be as much as this week, but like today, this is the first day off I've had in like 6 days, and I did a 2.5 hour live stream here, and then I'm going to be doing another hour or so debate, plus if I do videos today. So I'm trying my best. I really am, and I hope that you all appreciate that. But thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Please consider liking and subscribing. If you could, recommend me to some other people. So be back here at 4 p.m., so in an hour and a half for my debate, and yeah, it should be interesting. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a good one.